reborn in the empire where the sun never sets to become a pirate. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 551 King of the Ocean. Report, Captain, a large ship has been sighted, 18 kilometers away, heading northeast. Landmark comparison, Union Jack, 3-tier guns, and a trident-shaped bow image of Poseidon. It's confirmed to be the HMS Neptune, a Class I battleship belonging to the Royal Navy's North American fleet. Target is at anchor, relative speed 4.5 knots, expected contact in 2 hours, thunderclaps boomed. On June 15, 1786, after 2 weeks of slow sailing, the Valkyrie entered the target area at sunrise and spotted the Neptune an hour and a half later. Under the brilliant sunlight, the massive warship drifted quietly on the sea, a sea of gold and blue, its claws furled, unbridled in its display of strength and beauty. 110 gun class, Lorraine, crouching on the observation platform mid-mainmast, brewing vinegar, glanced down to see Washington and the admirals climbing the mast with an indescribably clumsy technique. Hamilton, the fastest climber, had already reached the third observation platform, 30 meters up. Lorraine, struck by a sudden, profound inspiration, leaned forward and shouted, "Mr. President, don't look down. Reassure yourself that this mast won't fall. Otherwise," before he could finish his words, a gentle breeze picked up from the sea, and the Valkyrie began to sway. The swaying increased with altitude, and by the middle of the mast, it had become a violent oscillation. The swings spanned 1 to 2 meters, and the landlubbers clinging to the mast's ladder screamed and wailed. As they did so, Vice Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Ingos fell, and after a brief free fall, he successfully transformed himself into a human wind chime on the mast. "I didn't expect it would be a Marine who fell." Lorraine rolled his eyes in frustration and took 2 steps to vacate his spot in the middle of the observation platform. "Remove the trolley, lower the fore and aft sail, maintain course, and sail steadily." Captain's order, "Trolley, lower the fore and aft sail, maintain course, and sail steadily, lower the sails. Lock the rudder." The wind chimes finally stopped shaking. Lorraine's command effectively caused the Valkyrie to abandon most of the wind that cut across it, leaving only the hull and the waves to ripple the ship. As the ship's speed plummeted, its shaking also decreased by almost 70%. The landlubbers climbed aboard one by one, and with each one, Edley handed them a monocular. Washington, breathlessly, approached Lorraine. "Mr. President, while you were being pranked, I suddenly remembered that you're still a young man of 26, so you just remembered it?" Lorraine pointed to a tiny black dot on the horizon. "When my well-intentioned reminder was taken as a prank, I also remembered that the person who just fell was actually your country's vice admiral." Washington raised the telescope and looked in the direction of Lorraine's finger. "The United States is a new country that was founded only 10 years ago. Vice Admiral Linges was the owner of a slave fleet before joining the Army. He is good at scheduling and proficient in finance. His most well-known talent is that he knows how to keep the 6 slave ships under his name energetic and well-organized. He is undoubtedly a competent naval advisor, but because he is the second-generation heir to the fleet, he does not spend much time on the ship and should not be able to do the work of a crew member." Lorraine rolled his eyes. "Your requirements for competence are really low. Maybe this is the self-awareness of a small country." Washington finally found the Neptune. The invincible light that filled the frame rushed towards him, crossing the 18 kilometers of sea, and easily knocked the telescope out of his palm. The beechwood tube fell to the ground with a clatter. Washington maintained his telescopic posture and asked softly, "That giant beast, is the Neptune, HMS Neptune, a British fully equipped ocean-going galleon-class first-class battleship, was built in 1757 and commissioned in 1762. It is one of the 7 existing first-class battleships of the Royal Navy." Lorraine recalled the Neptune in his memory in a slow voice. "The ship is 71.2 meters long, 17.1 meters wide, and has a mainmast height of 63 meters. It is fully equipped with square sails, stern sails, bow jibs, and tack sails. The total sail area exceeds 5,500 square meters. It has a downwind speed of 8 knots, a draft of 8.5 meters, and a full load of 880 sailors. In terms of ship armor, it is fully equipped with 110 guns. The main guns are three-tiered, with 30 32-pound long-range guns on the lower tier, 32 24-pound long-range guns on the middle tier, and 32 12-pound long-range guns on the upper tier. The bow guns are two-tiered, with two 68-pound mortars and two 12-pound medium-range guns. The stern guns are three-tiered, with four 12-pound short-range guns on each tier, for a total of 12 guns. You just called her a behemoth, which is both accurate and inaccurate, because there are less than 10 warships in this world that are truly qualified to compete with her, and 6 of them are her sisters. Her strength is enough to be called a king, or more accurately, the king of the ocean. You seem to know a lot about this giant beast, Washington responded in a wooden tone. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot that you are the Drake's child, and you were an excellent student at the Plymouth Naval Academy, so the president has investigated me. You know that's what should be done. Besides, if the investigation hadn't been detailed enough, how could I dare to let General Drake's brother become my captain? I thought friendship was the main reason you chose me. Lorraine smiled. Friendship is sentimental and not enough to convince those friends who are worried about me. Washington bent down, picked up the telescope, and held it in his palm. Mr. President, you just said that there are less than 10 ships in the world that can match that behemoth. Are there any treasures of Spain in it, Trinity? Lorraine pursed his lips slightly. That is a princess who cannot do without a nanny, but she has 4 layers of gun cabins after all. If the wind is calm, Neptune may lose to her in a duel. Then what about your Valkyrie? Valkyrie, Lorraine pondered for a moment. In a boarding battle, Valkyrie has less than half the crew of Neptune, and Britain also has the best marines in the world. In close combat, the 68-pounder is an invincible weapon. There is also a side height difference of more than 4 meters between the two sides, which means that I have no way to throw shotgun shells and chain shells onto Neptune's deck. Even at a 0-degree firing angle, the 12-pounder guns on the upper deck of Neptune can clean my deck from a high position. Medium range, long range, 54 guns versus 110 guns. Lorraine spread his hands. That's it. No matter what kind of support I get, I have no chance of winning. Then why did America choose your battleship? Because we have a speed difference of more than 6 knots. No matter what kind of support she gets, she will not find a chance to fire at Valkyrie. Those who have won can't catch up. Those who can catch up can't win. After the incisive code ended, Washington regained his pride. I will let the Navy Department carefully consider the procurement plan. Now I just hope God bless General Drake's sanity. Shaq's advantage is his sanity. Most of the time I especially hate this. Really, absolutely true. Lorraine played with a telescope in his hand. Mr. President, would you like to hang your American flag? I would be honored if you could. Chapter 552 Come, brother will teach you. Report to the captain. An American warship was spotted 15 kilometers away, heading southwest, with a relative speed of 3.5, a stable course, an escort ship number 6, comparing the flagship logo, the stars and stripes, the pansy commercial ensign, the St. George Guardian, the bow image of a spear-wielding Valkyrie, and the entire ship armored. It is determined to be the Valkyrie-class Valkyrie belonging to the Drake Chamber of Commerce. Identify the escort ships and confirm that they are the Philadelphia, Lexington, and Wisconsin of the Long Island Fleet, the Kenway and Adams of the Baltimore Fleet, and the Yamashiro of the Boston Fleet. They are all standard 1750 type French destroyers with diamond-shaped escort. Captain, please give your instructions on whether to prepare for combat. On the Neptune, Armani, who was once Bermuda's attendant captain and now the lieutenant commander of the Royal Navy Neptune, listened solemnly to the first mate's report. Order the alert level to level 3, he said. Put a lookout and tracking order on every American ship, reporting every 10 minutes, including the Valkyrie. He adjusted his tassels. Warn our officers that the Drake merchants aren't the same idiotic underdogs as the Americans. Everyone, be on high alert. We must present a peaceful posture, yet maintain the aura of sinking them. Yes, the first mate stood at attention and pounded his chest. I'm going to see the Admiral now. During this briefing, you'll command the decks. I'll take responsibility. Understood, Captain. The first mate walked with dignity. Watching his muscular figure, Commander Imani tugged at his collar unsurely. It's so hard to present myself as trustworthy, so hard. Admiral, can't I just stay your aide? Captaining a first-class ship is so hard, he couldn't say what was in his heart. The crew of the Neptune was already familiar with their young airborne captain's peculiar habit of drinking heavily. Every mission required a drink, sometimes several. It's like some captains enjoy visiting prostitutes, while others prefer male prostitutes. Essentially, these are healthy habits cultivated specifically to help them focus on their missions. They're the privilege of senior officers, and no one should be allowed to gossip about them. Of course, as long as the young captain remains as rigorous and reliable as he is now, no one will gossip about him. The reliable Amani ascended the poop deck with his head held high, climbing to the third floor with the most Royal Navy steps, and knocking 3 times with a particularly righteous dong dong dong. Report. Commander Terry Amani of HMS Neptune requests an audience. Enter. Yes. Please excuse me while I straighten my uniform. After a moment, Commander Amani, who had nothing left to do, finally straightened his cocked hat and pulled the doorknob. Admiral Terry Amani is here. Shark's office was always a simple, orderly, and boring place, every inch etched with refinement, every moment imbued with rigor. England's rigidity was etched everywhere he could see, a dazzling radiance that even the most inwardly minded couldn't penetrate. Armani's steely gaze melted into pitiful one the moment he entered the cabin. Though he remained motionless, he no longer possessed the aura of a perfect soldier. Admiral, Commander Raymond is so talented. I can sense the entire ship is wondering why he's still the first mate, because he's not a direct descendant. Shaq bluntly pointed out the crux of the matter. The Royal Navy has never lacked excellent officers. They're the best whetstones, skilled at turning useless connections into qualified admirals. Useless, Amani said with a doleful look. Admiral, I have no ambition, you'd better have, but I really don't. My father is just a little knight who's content with a little wealth. I scared him half to death when I visited my family last year in my major's uniform, then let him get used to it, Shaq said without looking up. Do you know why I didn't choose the Neptune as the new flagship? Oh, because you trust me, believe I can make Neptune obey you. No, because I want to. That's the Admiral's right, drawing a long straight line on the chart. Shaq looked up and pointed at the sofa in front of him. Amani quickly folded his legs and sat on it, only sitting on a quarter of his buttocks to ensure enough space for the swallowtail. I hope you have a good reason to interrupt my mapping, instead of simply using my cabin as a refuge, Lieutenant Colonel Amani. Reason. Armani was trembling with amnesia. That. Shaq's brows furrowed, squeezing out 3 deep wrinkles, and pounced on Armani's eyes like sharp claws. Amnesia was cured in an instant. Reason. General, your brother. No, it's President Drake of the Drake Chamber of Commerce. The stars and stripes are hanging on the mainmast of the Valkyrie, so he still accepted George Washington's employment. Shaq's face showed no emotion. Sure enough, a lowly businessman can't leave the lowly social circle after all. Emmons, you guess right again. A hand stretched out from the darkest place in the entire cabin. Shaq stood up and took out a gold pound from his pocket and put it on it. Emmons happily put the gold pound to his lips and blew on it. Listening to the ringing of the gold coin, he sighed with contentment. Sheng Wei, my beloved general, put the gold pound safe and tell me why you are so sure that Lorraine wants to sell this favor. Because I found that President Drake seems to have special trust in the potential of the country guys. Emmons smiled, put the gambling money into his arms, and patted his pocket. He spared no effort in cultivating his connections and friendships with the country bumpkins. In his personal relationships, Alexander Hamilton was his closest friend after Horatio Nelson. Although there was a factor of compatibility, a noble person like him had no need to condescend. He took the initiative to maintain contact with Hamilton. It is well known in America that Hamilton has the financial support of the Drake Chamber of Commerce. I can only guess that President Drake allowed Hamilton to take advantage of him to this extent because he believed that the country bumpkins could bring him greater benefits and believed that the country bumpkins would have a more prosperous future. A Confederate congressman close to us told me that Hamilton was working hard to promote the Valkyrie as George Washington's Northern Patrol ship, but the conditions proposed by the president were too harsh. The country bumpkins also have dignity, so this matter was rejected in February. You see, the country bumpkins actually dared to reject the conditions of a nobleman. Such arrogance must not be tolerated. Even for the dignity of the nobility, we need to make the lower class wag their tails and beg for mercy. Mr. President's decision is just a pleasant surprise in this punishment. Now I am convinced that his reason for protecting the country bumpkins is not just because he likes them. Shaq nodded slightly. The analysis is brilliant, Emmons, but it is not enough. Not enough. My brother is stupid, but he has been praised by His Majesty after all. He needs to put himself in the right position more clearly and see the difference between noble and humble. Today is a good opportunity. I am just about to teach him these. Shaq closed his eyes coldly. Lieutenant Colonel Amani, where's Valkyrie coming from? Report, southwest-west, 15 kilometers away. Give the order, open the gun port to the fullest, saturate both sides at 10 kilometers, saturate again at 5 kilometers, and saturate for the third time at 1 kilometer. George Washington is an internationally recognized leader of a country. This is a formal diplomatic occasion. A 3-gun salute is worthy of his status, and then, open the gun port to allow them to board. Lieutenant Colonel Amani blinked in embarrassment. General, for the salute, only the top gun is enough. Isn't it saturation a bit? You seem to admire Lieutenant Colonel Raymond, don't you? Degree Greek letter delta degree. When the salute is fired, each of you will be in charge of one side, and also tell him that I have a good impression of him. Greek letter sigma, degree Cyrillic letter de degree. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553 The Elements of Dynasty. Boom. Boom. Thunder roared between sea and sky. The combined might of 94 cannons blasted the heavens and earth with devastating force. Even from 10 kilometers away, Lorraine on the high platform could almost smell the faint scent of gunpowder. The atmosphere on the observation deck was oppressive. Lorraine glanced over and saw Washington's clenched hands and ashen face. Hamilton said what the Americans wanted to say but were reluctant to say. What is this? A provocation? A deterrent? A show of force? What is it? Lorraine thought for a moment. Mr. President is a serious leader of a country, and this meeting also started with Shaq's invitation. This is a diplomatic occasion, and the salute is a suitable embellishment, representing the respect and welcome of the host. The voice paused here subtly. If you want to keep a good mood, I suggest you think so. Are you letting Mr. President deceive himself? It's something that is expected. Instead of deceiving yourself, it's better to regard it as psychological construction. Hamilton was furious, and he was rarely aggressive to Lorraine. Lorraine, can you guarantee that Shaq Drake will not do something despicable? I can guarantee it. Lorraine's answer was completely beyond the Americans' expectations. In the final analysis, you think too highly of yourselves. What victory? The founding of the country, the British withdrawal, and even the abandonment of New York. Shaq is a severe glory addict. In his eyes, the family's reputation is more important than God's will. Murdering the leader of a small country would make Drake a laughingstock in the upper-class world and would also cause the fearlessness inherited by his ancestors for 200 years to rot and decay. If killing the president here could tear America apart, Britain would probably be happy to see it happen. But what does that have to do with Shaq? To him, we are just insects that can be easily swatted, not worth sacrificing his honor. You can rest assured about this. Strangely relieved. For the first time in his life, Hamilton discovered that safety could also be humiliating. He did not doubt Lorraine's analysis. Both emotionally and rationally, he believed that Lorraine would not harbor any ill will towards Washington. But what was the throbbing in his heart? Those reasons, so real that they could not be refuted, untied the knot in his heart, and also completely severed America's past glory, leaving not even an inch. Is this the true weight? Hamilton gritted his teeth. Lorraine, how should we respond? The safest way is to live in disgrace, but you said he disdains to attack us. In other words, you want to respond to Shaq's expectations to some extent. Lorraine touched his chin. I want command of the escort fleet. Okay, it was Washington who spoke. As long as you need it and we can give it, including myself, I will be at your disposal from now on. Is that so? Lorraine smiled knowingly, and the flag on the foremast of the escort flagship Adams was reflected in his pupils. Please complete the transfer of command within 10 minutes. Also, I remember there was a box of military uniforms in the president's luggage, right? Hamilton was stunned for a moment. There are clothes. They are all new army uniforms. The president originally planned to organize a ceremony to honor retired veterans at the Old North Church. The veterans shouldn't mind their uniforms being worn by others. Yes, please lend them to me. A pansy slowly descended from the Valkyrie's foremast. Soon, a deep blue, 13-star encircled flag was hoisted atop the masthead. Its design perfectly replicated the Confederate flag, predating the Star-Spangled Banner. This was the command flag of the American Army. America, with its shallow history, still lacked a dedicated military flag, certainly not a more specialized admiral's flag. The flag's sole value lay in its quest for suicidal intent, crossed out, in clarifying command. With this flag transferred from the Adams to the Valkyrie, Lorraine assumed command of the American Navy warship. They had already descended from the observation deck. Lorraine stood at the bow, leaning on the hilt of his sword, as he did during every major battle. America's elite stood behind him, watching the battle for national sovereignty between the Drake brothers. Order. The escort fleet disperses at half speed and patrols a 20-kilometer area centered on the Neptune. Instructions: each ship's patrol route must intersect within 1 kilometer of the Neptune. No closer than 500 meters, and no evasion of artillery fire. During the patrol, if a British warship is sighted, close in and drive it away. Flag signals are issued to warn. No cannon fire, no rifle fire, no return fire. Inform every escort sailor. Remember, they are honorable American soldiers, prepared to sacrifice their lives for their country. This bizarre order was relayed to each ship via flag signal, sending the escort fleet into an uproar. However, the Valkyrie's flag bearer explicitly refused to convey the protest signal. All ships, set sail, disperse. The final order was given, and the soldiers had no chance to appeal. No matter how dissatisfied they felt, they had no choice but to obey and set sail. Admiral Smith, who had arrived from his flagship on the Valkyrie, glared at Lorraine with red eyes, condemning him. "Madman! You are sending my soldiers to die?" Lorraine said with an indifferent expression. "Judging from the last round of salutes, Neptune's range is set at 1600 to 800. I let them patrol at 1000-500, which will only cause trouble to the bombarders. The possibility of being hit is very small, but what if it hits? What if?" Lorraine tilted his head. "What? America is still planning to declare war on Great Britain." General Smith's anger froze. "That's it," Lorraine said. "America has no choice. Even if the escort fleet is sunk, it can only be regarded as a tragic accident, and then run as far as possible." His joking tone completely ignited General Smith. The politician general, whose main job was to be a member of parliament, strode up to Lorraine, raised his chin high, looked down at Lorraine, and tried to look him in the eye. "You clearly knew all this, but you still set layers of restrictions for my soldiers, forcing them to die, because you want dignity." Lorraine's face turned cold, and his voice became colder. "For weak countries, only fearless soldiers are dignity. Are they dangerous? Dangerous. With the physique of a destroyer, a 24-pound bullet is enough to penetrate their hull. Are they dangerous? Not dangerous. The 18-pound gun can only leave shallow pits on the hull of Neptune. They are not a threat. Shaq will never deliberately target them. I let them advance with anger, and let them search for the enemy under Neptune's nose. However, there are no enemies within 20 kilometers around Neptune. The Valkyrie's mainmast is 58 meters long, and I have already seen their detection range. What do the British think of this search? Lorraine asked himself. The American escort fleet attacked amid the salute, cruising around the powerful opponent with murderous intent and fighting spirit. Even their sharpest claws are not enough to tire the opponents, for they still move forward, still willing to gamble their lives, just to make the opponent hesitate. This is a fearless army that is extremely loyal to its leader. They may only be able to despise their own lives at sea, but what about on land? Will the Red Army that has lost its glory dare to challenge this group of fearless fanatics again? Just 6 destroyers, just 1,500 poorly trained lives. If you don't even dare to make these bets, how can you ask for dignity in free America? The value of life. This is very good. Washington's low voice suppressed General Smith's rebuttal. The founding father of freedom looked at Lorraine sadly and firmly. This is very good, but is this all you are prepared for? Betting on the faith of America and shaping a group of reckless men? Of course it's more than that. Lorraine saluted Washington with his hand on his chest. Fearlessness is part of dignity and symbolizes strength. In addition to strength, a gentleman also needs cultivation and determination. Catalina, are you ready? Catalina stood out from the crowd and reported loudly. Report. According to the captain's order, Valkyrie has been upgraded to level 2 combat readiness, and all personnel have cancelled their rest. The 40 stormtroopers have completed their equipment change, and the gun bays and decks are fully prepared and are on standby. Order. The stormtroopers line up on the deck. Yes, Two groups of imposing stormtroopers marched out from the stern cabin, the left group led by Leif and the right group led by Ka. Except for Leif and Ka, who were shirtless and fully armed, the rest of them were dressed in meticulous American military uniforms, holding brand new rifles equipped with bayonets, standing in equal distances like pine trees. Line up on the deck, as if undergoing an inspection, is a naval etiquette. The only regret is that there are not enough Charlevilles on my ship. But who knows? The U.S. military is like a multinational brand. It is not a big deal to have an escort team using maritime commuter occasionally. This way we show our cultivation. Finally, be firm. Lorraine's eyes look towards the stern. Raise the square sail, the fore and aft sail, spread the catching sail, and open all the gun ports. Command. Target HMS Neptune. Valkyrie is going at full speed. Prepare blank cartridges on both sides, and fire from both sides at a distance of 5 kilometers. Demonstrate a real salute to our opponents, and let our opponents appreciate the performance of the wind. Tell Zheng Drake that small countries also have the dignity of small countries. Then, gentlemen and ladies, stand firm. We are setting sail. Chapter 554, All Villains. War spirit burned. Neptune's deteriorating salute ignited the air, and the American warships rushed out in a chaotic, scattering rage, like arrows shot from a bow, cannonballs fired from a gun. Miraculously, not a single ship complied with Lorraine's order to sail at half sail. Everywhere they looked, sails were filled, and the waterline, breaking through the waves, painted a chaotic, endless, and indistinct landscape. They acted like true knights, ready to die, yet their inner motivations were the exact opposite: disgust, fear, hatred, and a cowardly desire to escape certain death. The riot of black blended into a brilliant white. If this were art, it would drive countless people wild. But the Valkyrie was filled with villains accustomed to playing with people's hearts from a superior position. To them, the reversal of things was merely a magic trick, revealing the mystery, not even worth savoring. Regardless, the American warships charged the Neptune like warriors, and in the blink of an eye, one ship was within range of its main guns. The Neptune's gunners stared at the incredible scene with wide eyes, hesitating when they heard a command from the deck. American flagship, accelerate, range 6,500, starboard in port. The lieutenant commander in command in the middle deck shuddered violently, because things seemed to be getting complicated. The Neptune had come to assert its authority over the newly formed North American fleet. Zheng opted for peaceful diplomacy, intending to use Neptune's unparalleled maritime dominance to force the Americans to recognize reality and keep their tails between their legs, at least until peace was achieved. With this goal in mind, Zheng's order was supported and praised by the entire ship's officers. A salvo fired under the guise of a salute. Such a brilliant and arrogant tactic was indeed the perfect way to demonstrate Neptune's immense power. Who knows why the Americans suddenly went crazy? According to Zheng's original order, the third salute should have been fired once the American flagship had advanced to within 5 kilometers. But now, one American destroyer had just emerged from the bombardment zone, another was at a distance of 700 meters, and 4 more were behind. Their distances and bearings varied, but judging by their movement, a charge into the bombardment zone was almost certain. The purpose of the declaration was to avoid a fight, a consensus held throughout the North American fleet. However, if an American warship were damaged or sunk during the declaration, wouldn't that constitute an undeclared war? Would the Americans use this as an excuse to declare war? Great Britain had just suffered a defeat in North America, and could its limited finances afford a new large-scale war? Even at the very least, would Neptune really be the spark that sparked the Second North American War? Would His Majesty truly harbor resentment towards Neptune if such an unauthorized battle was fought? Would the careers of the officers on board be jeopardized? Could this gun actually fire? Confused and bewildered, the gunnery commander quickly sought out Lieutenant Commander Amani, who was in charge of the starboard side. "Captain, the bombardment area isn't clear yet. There are American warships navigating the impact zone. If they accidentally hit, if they hit, it just means they were unlucky." The cold, clear reply came not from Amani, but from Zheng. At some point, Zheng had left the admiral's room and leisurely strolled to the gun bay, just in time to overhear the gunnery commander's question. He glanced at the sleeve lines of the gunner. "Major, are you worried that our salute will cause a diplomatic dispute?" "Yes, yes. This is my official concern, Your Excellency the Admiral. Your worries are unnecessary." Zheng sneered. "I was observing the movement of the American destroyers on the deck. It seemed chaotic, but in fact it was always guarding a certain border, 800-500 meters. I guess their generals don't allow them to go deep into the 500-meter line, because once it is less than this distance, the hit rate of artillery fire from both sides will be greatly improved. We are different from them. They are afraid of provoking a war, while Great Britain is looking forward to war. As long as the war can be restarted, New York and New England will return to the embrace of the kingdom, and the rich 13 states will return to the embrace of the kingdom. What we lack is a small excuse to perfunctorily deal with the international community, because no one wants the Second North American War to once again become a stage for a confrontation between Britain and France. That is what we really don't want to see. Now, that's great, Shaq grinned, his voice so flat that no smile could be heard. For the sake of peace and order in North America, I condescend to invite General George Washington of the United States to discuss the future situation and development in the Americas. We have high hopes for this discussion, but rednecks are rednecks. They shamelessly attacked us during the welcome salute. Fortunately, those shabby destroyers could not really break through Neptune's iron wall. The Americans raided and were sunk by our salute. Shaq looked at the chief gunner. What did you understand by what you said just now, Major? Oh, is it upside down? The facts are unclear. Amani interrupted the chief gunner's answer loudly, and said at a very fast speed, because there are no witnesses on the high seas, no matter how this matter develops, both sides will only describe the part that is beneficial to themselves. General, what if the facts are unclear? Lieutenant Colonel, today's incident cannot develop into a war. Justice does not favor any side. Shaq finally showed a satisfied expression. The Americans are brave. To reward them, we should respond, increase the salute from 3 to 7, and the remaining salutes should be fired once every kilometer. No need to adjust the ship's position, just aim and fire. Please treat this as a game, and let the Americans know that even if they risk everything, they are still nothing. Yes, General Admiral. Boom 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 boom. Another round of cannon fire, thunder shaking the sky and earth, bullets tearing the ocean. American warships streaked through the smoke, fleeing in panic, and new ships rushed into the impact zone, like stray dogs ready to die. Shaq and Emin stepped back onto the deck one after another. In a short time, the Valkyrie had come much closer. From the height of Neptune's deck, they could see her masthead directly, slowly rising from the sea. Emmons grinned like a fox. General, the Valkyrie also fired, but there were no explosions on the sea surface. It's presumably blanks. The country bumpkins don't have the guts to fight back. Lorraine must have done it, Shaq replied. Fight back? Emmons thought for a moment. The lookout also said they had a ceremonial parade on the first deck. The timing of the parade was roughly the same as when those escort ships went crazy. It seems the president had a lot of fun, because even I wouldn't easily threaten George Washington's safety. Lorraine's only ship is in the safest corner of the sea. None of my business. That's not true. Shaq shook his head. He's indeed helping the Americans with their plans. All I can say is that he's keeping a safe distance for the time being. A very good response. The last sentence was spoken softly. Emmons knew Shaq didn't want him to hear it, so he naturally pretended not to hear. General, after meeting with Washington, do you want to meet the president? Or wait for him to go to Newfoundland? Let's meet on the sea, Shaq answered quickly. When I meet with Washington, you first send the man from Boston to the Lorraine, and I will hand over the matter to him. That matter. Chapter 555, Verbal Warfare. Sadly, Neptune's salute ultimately failed to strike any of the American warships. From a purely rational perspective, this was perfectly normal. Beyond 500 meters, the British naval guns had a maximum hit rate of no more than 1%. 7 rounds on a single flank only yielded about 300 rounds. American destroyers would have to risk their lives for less than 1 round, and no ship dared attempt a second. This result disappointed Lorraine. He had assumed that the old ironclad nations would be more daring, but judging by the results, valor was truly the province of the younger generation, not the current U.S. Navy. The Valkyrie closed within a kilometer of the Neptune. The artillery fire suddenly ceased, and the sea returned to calm. Rows of British Marines, rifles in hand, filed out from the stern compartment, forming lines on either side of the ship, looking down at the lowered sails Valkyrie. I hate the difference in side height, Lorraine snorted softly, raising his arm high. Decks in position, catch the cables thrown by the other side to connect the two ships. Be careful not to disrupt the ceremony. Yes, a moment later, 14 thick cables connected the two ships, similar in length but vastly different in height. The Neptune dropped a coil of rope ladder, and Hamilton was about to direct his attendants to catch it when Lorraine grabbed hold of it. Lorraine's strength was so great that it nearly yanked Hamilton off the ground. He stumbled back, unsure of what was happening. "Lorraine, what are you doing? You want Mr. President to climb onto the British warship, huh?" I asked the Navy. "Don't ships use rope ladders to board each other? You may have some misunderstanding about boarding." Lorraine pouted. "The essence of boarding is to go from one ship to another. It is a process, not a method. The rope ladder thrown by Neptune is of course a common means. It is not only safe, but also particularly embarrassing for a well-dressed gentleman." Hamilton froze for a moment. "Zheng Drake, he would actually use such a trick. Zheng should not bother to use tricks, and he would not even bother to arrange the details of your boarding. I roughly know who arranged the rope ladder. If it was him, he would definitely take these details into consideration." Cold sweat broke out on Hamilton's forehead. On unfamiliar waters, details once impossible to overlook became inescapable traps. If Lorraine hadn't taken on the ceremonial role, America's reputation would have been completely shattered from the moment Neptune's salute sounded. He took a deep breath. "Lorraine, now, Mr. President, are you still changing?" Lorraine stretched lazily. "There's plenty of time. It's just a little trick. It's not a big deal." When Washington finished changing and emerged from the cabin, he saw 3 planks joined together between the 2 ships, forming a gentle slope, with anti-slip bars every 50 to 60 centimeters. Planks are essential for every ship's mooring, but the Valkyrie's freeboard was high, and the prepared planks were much longer than the difference in height between the 2 ships. Therefore, they were set particularly far back, appearing to be particularly flat. Seeing the unnoticed rope ladder beside the plank, Washington immediately recounted this story on deck. He nodded slightly to Lorraine. "Mr. President, America will remember your kindness. I have shown America much kindness, but politicians' memories are always fleeting. So, thank you, Mr. President." Washington showed no sign of embarrassment at the blunt words of thanks. He smiled broadly. "Rest assured, Mr. President, as long as it doesn't involve national interests, my memory is always good. I have no doubt about it, Mr. President." Lorraine saw a figure appear at the other end of the deck. In the center was the familiar figure, Zheng Anyue. Judging by his gilded uniform and intricate sleeve patterns, the former captain was now a lieutenant commander. Commander Anyue stood high on the ship's side and bowed to Washington. "General Washington, welcome to HMS Neptune, a first-class battleship of the British Royal Navy. She's one of the greatest sailing warships in the world today. You seem luckier than most to be aboard her." "We all have different interpretations of luck, Commander. In my opinion, the boat tied to the dock at Mount Vernon is the true luck-bringing ship. The Neptune is too large, it would run aground in most parts of America, but our mission is to prevent the Neptune from running aground. I'm Captain Zheng Anyue of the Royal Navy." "Captain Anyue, I'm George Washington, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army, and a close friend of your great Major General Cornwallis." "Great? Cornwallis? I've heard of hundreds of Cornwallises, and none of them seem to be truly great." The exchange of sharp words. This routine exchange of innuendos felt strangely fresh to Lorraine. Washington's grounding theory clearly told Anyue that America couldn't be conquered by a powerful navy alone. The later mentioned renowned Major General Cornwallis was clearly referring to Cornwallis, the defeated commander at Yorktown. It was a delicate combination, confidence and reserve, but it wasn't enough to resonate with Lorraine. Lorraine's novelty came from Anyue. She hadn't expected the honest, often punished man to possess such eloquence. And, no matter how skilled Anyue was at speaking, he was, after all, a mere lieutenant commander, and his role today was no more noble than that of a doorman. Such a minor figure had to be personally addressed by Washington, and throughout the entire conversation, not a single member of America's elite team, including Hamilton, stepped forward. Was it inferiority complex? Or nervousness? Lorraine glanced at Hamilton's face. It was sullen, as if the terms inferiority complex and nervousness were oversimplified, their feelings more complex than that. Lorraine couldn't help but recall the Portuguese general named Scalari. Spain had once been Portugal's overlord. When Lorraine mentioned Spain to Scalari, his expression bore a striking resemblance to Hamilton's current. "You're not a worthy son of liberty if you yearn for your overlord," Lorraine whispered in Hamilton's ear, gently straightening his posture. Hamilton, startled awake, nodded gratefully to Lorraine, and strode out of the procession of attendants. Captain Armani, we've been chatting long enough. I wonder if Admiral Drake has finished his wig, tisk, Armani spat, tilting his head. The Admiral is waiting for you on the stern deck. If you're not worried about being caught, you can all come. Permission to embark was granted, though Lorraine considered the diplomatic experience utterly humiliating. But the Americans had their reasons for wanting to meet with Shaq, and Lorraine, fully aware of their fears, naturally did not doubt their tolerance. Led by Washington, they stepped onto the ship's deck. There were only 7 or 8 of them, no escorts, and only one official remained, General Smith, the admiral of the escort fleet. Watching the crowd disappear into the blind spot of his sight, Lorraine glanced at General Smith from the corner of his eye. Do you need me to call back the Adams? Please call back all the ships, he said coldly. If the worst comes to the worst, I will launch the first counterattack on behalf of America. Even in the War of Independence, you didn't launch a charge that was certain to kill you, did you? But the president deserves it, General Smith said firmly. And the British need to know that America is willing to do this for the president. Chapter 556 The Ultimate Goal. The British need to know. The British. Admiral Smith was turning the ship, and Lorraine was irritated. He believed the most unpleasant thing about politicians was their fundamental belief that friends, not allies, could be trusted. Allies were bound together by shared interests, and interests were the most solid thing in the world, the anchor of rationality. Lorraine didn't disagree, but simply felt. When temptation isn't sufficient, friends can sometimes be trusted, right? I think if they weren't, the American fleet probably wouldn't be deployed in this bizarre configuration. Huh? The voice came from behind him, in other words, from the Neptune. Lorraine turned back with a sour face. I didn't expect Mr. Gambler to have such a bad habit of listening to others' advice. Captain Emmons, the multiple thin stripes on the sleeves disappeared, replaced by simple thick bars and stars. This was Lorraine's most surprising discovery of the day. You messed up your job, but got promoted? It seems Lord Tavistock truly favors you, Commodore. Emmons paid no heed to Lorraine's venting of anger, maintaining a mocking expression that threatened to provoke a fight. Well, under His Excellency's command, creating opportunities for brotherly reunions is always a solid reward. My promotion was a reward for merit, and in essence, it's completely different from those unscrupulous individuals who rely on currying favor with their superiors to get ahead. You're certainly different from ordinary unscrupulous individuals, Lorraine scoffed, lifted his foot, turned, and walked away. His displeasure intensified. On the other side of the Valkyrie, the admiral had been taken away, the command flag handed over, and the Adams was busy detaching from the Valkyrie. General Smith's words were harsh. More accurately, General Smith and the rest of the Presidential Security Service had never trusted Lorraine or any of the Valkyrie's crew members. But the moment he left the ship, Smith still bowed to Lorraine from a distance. Lorraine saw this, and therefore knew that Smith probably didn't care whether Lorraine saw it or not. The sea staircase, which had been assembled for less than half an hour, began to disintegrate. The shortest ship, the Adams, drifted away in a radial arc, following the wind, and soon joined the American fleet anchored in the distance. That was what Emmons had referred to as the strange distribution, with a Valkyrie at the center, the 6 warships, following the current, gathered relative to the Neptune, less than a kilometer from the docking area. At first glance, it seemed as if they were hiding in the Valkyrie's shadow. Even if the Neptune bared its fangs, they could use the Valkyrie as a shield, unharmed. However, Smith had made the purpose of the American fleet's gathering clear. By the time they were needed, the Valkyrie would have betrayed the United States. But if Lorraine actually reversed course, their formation would make them easy targets for the Valkyries. Before they could mobilize, Atron's artillery combined with the Valkyrie's firepower would easily destroy half of them. Even if they reduced the 32-pound force to the advertised 18 pounds, their losses would still be substantial. In other words, the American ships were gathering because of trust, but their purpose was distrust. As for whether this was trust or distrust, Lorraine suspected, even they themselves couldn't tell. Should I give them a gentle warning? Lorraine pondered maliciously, when he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. Someone was approaching, heavy and slow. He unsheathed his sword with a clang, twisted his body, and swung it at the figure behind him. In an instant, the blade stopped at Emmons's neck with a swish. Emmons was so frightened that he didn't dare to move. Mr. President, you seem a little irritable today. Killing 1 or 2 naval officers who boarded civilian ships without permission wouldn't be considered irritable. But you, Have the Americans shown themselves too weak? I find that you are all a little too proud of yourselves. The murderous intention was real. Emmons swallowed hard. Mr. President, I know it feels bad to be caught in the middle, not being trusted, not getting a response. But think about it from another perspective. Don't you think this is exactly the position that businessmen dream of? Isn't an absolute neutral position what businessmen always pursue? You are really good at guessing people's hearts. Lorraine took a step closer with a knife in hand. Unfortunately, it seems I guessed wrong this time. The general wants to see you. Emmons corrected at the fastest speed. No, it's him who wants to see you. It was to adjust your schedule that he planned this meeting on the high seas. The irritability dissipated. This time, Emmons hit the core. The source of Lorraine's irritability was indeed Shaq. A few days ago, when Lorraine first felt that his actions were all orchestrated by Shaq, he began to fret. Firstly, the image of a powerful America constantly clouded Lorraine's judgment. Secondly, to manipulate the sacredness of diplomacy to seize the initiative in a brotherly meeting seemed a bit absurd. Lorraine confidently believed his intuition was simply an overly self-conscious illusion. It was the sudden blast of artillery that shook Lorraine's confidence. Too arrogant, too overbearing. Even the United States was as weak as a child compared to the mighty Britain. Shaq shouldn't have acted so nonchalantly. It simply wasn't responsible diplomacy. Unless. Lorraine thought of only one possibility. Unless this diplomatic move was a frivolous, impulsive act from the start. Shaq had no mission, no intention of achieving results, no need to reach an agreement. The nagging feeling of being manipulated resurfaced in that moment, and Lorraine, desperate for answers, was willing to sacrifice crucial distance. He proactively stepped out of neutrality and began purposefully assisting, even directing, the American response to the diplomatic crisis. He chose the most drastic of all measures, the most direct provocation the United States could muster at this stage. If Shaq had a mission, he would have stopped the salute. If he simply wanted to intimidate the United States and establish an advantage for the North American fleet, he would have launched a counterattack, preventing the American provocation from becoming reality and thus closing the final avenue for negotiation. However, Shaq chose a third path, a direct response, ignoring the risks. Shaq didn't care if the American warships were hit, or if the Americans were humiliated. To be more precise, he didn't care about the Americans. Since he didn't care about the Americans, his sole purpose in arranging this high seas meeting was, of course, Lorraine. Everything was under Shaq's control, the Valkyrie's journey north, its appointment as Washington's flagship, and perhaps even its subsequent journey to Boston. With a clang, the longsword returned to its sheath. Lorraine glanced at the tall Neptune from the corner of his eye. If the honorable Baron wants to see me, just say it directly. Why go through so much trouble by beating around the bush? The North American fleet is in its infancy, and the general doesn't have much free time. He probably wants to deal with many things at once, many things. In other words, I may have to say goodbye to my American friends in advance. The general will persuade the Americans to transfer. You don't need to worry about this. Emmons straightened his messy collar. By the way, Mr. President, how is Belgiodia? The helmsman will lock the rudder and rest after the connection. He should be in the cafeteria now, but I don't intend to allow you to see him. No need to meet. We are not such good friends. Emmons smiled and waved his hand. I have clearly conveyed the general's invitation to you. Please tell Mr. Belgiodia for me. I am deeply sorry to learn that he has not been defeated by the suspicion. I will convey it, Lorraine said expressionlessly. Also please tell Mr. Baron that he is getting more and more childish after not seeing him for a few years. Chapter 557, Thrill from the New World. Swift as the wind, swift as fire, slow as a forest, immovable as a mountain. Chanting an incantation only Wang Yi could understand, Lorraine brandished his twin blades across the open foredeck. The sword is a single-minded weapon, designed for slashing, not piercing. It's inherently ill-suited against heavily armored knights, but on the seas, where iron armor is rarely used, it commands the trust of sailors, far surpassing the all-purpose sword and axe in popularity. Sailors favored the scimitar, a blade measuring 60 to 80 centimeters in length, not too thick, and about the width of a palm. It presented no significant disadvantages in terms of weight or offensive and defensive capabilities, and was easy to use and maintain, making it highly suitable for beginners. However, the Drake family tradition favored the more challenging crescent blade, with a blade length of 100 to 140 centimeters, weighing 1.5 to 5 kilograms, narrower than the scimitar, and with a straighter arc than the crescent. This type of sword is best suited for bold, aggressive breakthroughs. Legend has it that Francis, wielding his sword with both hands, was unmatched in boarding combat with his fearlessness and brutality. Later, as his skills and physique matured, he began to experiment with two broadswords. Countless Drakes after him refined his legacy, ultimately developing the crescent-shaped twin blades wielded by Lorraine today. The Drake family's swordsmanship is quite unique. Those unfamiliar with this martial art are unaware of its existence, while those familiar with the Drake family often view it as a high-attack, killing technique based on the blades. However, true crescent-shaped twin blades are defensive, emphasizing blade feel, self-preservation, and the highest standards of precision, coupled with constant restraint. The roots of this style remain Francis, the legendary Drake family patriarch who, rising from humble beginnings, built a world-renowned career and fame with a single blade. When he realized this, he knew he no longer needed to fight tooth and nail. However, the style of a ship or a fleet wasn't easily changed. He had to be at the vanguard to remain a legend. The twin blades were the compromise he'd reached after much deliberation. The blades were wider, offering greater reach, and more importantly, they allowed him to maintain an image of bravery and dedication to his crew and opponents, both courageous and timid. After him, successive generations of twin blade wielders were either distinguished barons or members of equally distinguished baron families. Of course, there was no reason to risk one's life. Driven by this demand, the crescent blades grew ever more refined, placing greater emphasis on protecting the wielder. For a defensive skill, mastery is paramount, and every Drake who learned the art of twin blades began practicing the fundamentals from a young age: slashing, spinning, footwork, leaping, and even the seemingly indescribably fancy blade patterns and lead-in techniques. These basic and less basic sword techniques comprised the complete set of the crescent moon blades. Lorraine practiced these tedious exercises almost daily, though most of them took place under the moonlight, rarely in the early morning. At least as far as Hannah could remember, they were never practiced in the morning, midday, or afternoon. Noon and afternoon were considered gentlemanly times, and his biological clock wouldn't allow Lorraine to wield his swordsmanship at these times. But it was noon, 11:43 a.m., and the Anglo-American talks had been underway for an hour and 3 minutes, with no sign of ending. Hannah pursed her lips as she approached. Carmen arrived soon after, and soon after, Noah joined the forecastle. 3 pairs of beautiful eyes, each of varying colors, exchanged glances, each filled with worry, confirming Hannah's certainty that Lorraine's actions signaled something unusual. Even so, Lorraine's swordsmanship remained beautiful, flowing like water, a perfect balance of movement and stillness. As an expert in martial arts, Hannah had long since discovered that during training, the crescent-shaped blades never unleashed their full force in each strike. The blades always paused at specific moments, allowing the tips to rise and the blades to move forward. This was meant to inculcate the virtue of restraint in the wielder, never exhausting all their strength, leaving themselves ample room for maneuver. However, Lorraine seemed to be retaining a bit more force today than usual. This subtle difference was discernible only to Hannah on board, the slight extra fatigue caused by the disruption of the established rhythm, and perhaps only Hannah could detect it. Lorraine began to spin, moving in an arc, his feet alternating as the axis. The first circle, arms extended flat, the second slowly retracted, the third brought to his waist, the fourth drawing the blades to protect him, the fifth expanding in the opposite direction, his entire body moving like a spinning top, until, on the sixth circle, he ground his foot firmly and abruptly stopped, harnessing the immense momentum, extending his arms and delivering the blades like lightning, cutting horizontally at the limit of his arms. The air ripped apart, and Lorraine, fully extended, leaped high, bringing his blades down to chop. This was the final move of the crescent blades. Hannah had seen it countless times, knowing the blades would stop at the very last moment, barely missing the deck. But who knew? A long, crisp collision. Hannah looked at the equally surprised Lorraine in surprise, and the first thing she did was complain. "If you can't adjust, I don't think you're fit for any battle yet." Lorraine smiled wryly, sheathing his knife and looking at the long, thin cuts on the deck. "There won't be a fight for now, probably. It could come at any moment." Hannah pulled out a red velvet, dangling it from her finger and spinning it slowly. "A throwing knife is enough to deal with you now, perhaps." Carmen stepped forward and took the towel from Noah. Minister Hamilton just returned and asked Catalina to recall the Adams. We have 5 minutes to board, Lorraine's brow furrowed. Is Hamilton out? The meeting over? I don't know, Carmen shook her head helplessly. The minister didn't say anything, but there's no doubt he looked grim. Perhaps this is the first time Americans have seen their own weakness and powerlessness so clearly. It's normal for their faces to look grim, Lorraine said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Just like me, I thought I had accumulated enough strength, but only just now realized it's 1786. No one understood the meaning of Lorraine's words. In 1786, the difference between wealth and nobility was still huge. Even though Lorraine possessed immense power in the New World, even though he could influence the fate of a second-rate nation, even though he struck fear into the hearts of pirates, the true, established elite could still manipulate him. A sense of defeat? Humiliation? Or powerlessness? More accurately, a sense of crisis. For the first time in his life, he truly saw the supreme authority of Baron Tavistock, touch the secular world at the pinnacle of his age, felt his own insignificance, and shuddered from the depths of his being. Hannah, as if she could hear the trembling deep within her soul, suddenly reached out and, before Carmen and Noah, scooped Lorraine up in her arms, holding him tightly. Don't be afraid. I can kill them for you, no matter who they are. Lorraine closed his eyes, feeling Hannah's softness and body fragrance, and whispered, don't worry, this isn't fear, it's just a new starting point, then I'll walk with you, forever, I know. Hannah's hand loosened, and Lorraine stood up. He walked past the stunned Carmen and the ostrich-possessed Noah, and saw the exhausted Washington and his entourage at the other end of the deck. Lorraine smiled and went to greet them. Mr. President, you summoned the Adams. I guess you are ready to terminate this employment. This has been an unforgettable journey. Both America and I have benefited a lot, Drake. This was the first time Washington called Lorraine simply Drake. I heard that you and your brother don't get along well. It's not that we get along badly. Let me think about it. It's probably more appropriate to say that we are irreconcilable. Personal grudge, personal desire. There is no grudge. Washington smiled. You and your brother are very different, but equally frank. I will take this evaluation as a compliment. It is indeed a compliment. Washington patted Lorraine on the shoulder. This is a shame for America, Drake. Your brother hopes to reunite with his younger brother. Even God cannot deny this hope. I understand. Lorraine had guessed the development a long time ago and was not surprised at all. Then everything goes smoothly. Mr. President, thank you. The American team got off the Neptune. The moment they passed by, Washington stopped. Drake, if you have the chance to go to Boston again, remember that Alexander will be waiting for you there for a week. You can find him at the Solomon Chamber of Commerce in Back Bay. If you don't have the chance to go to Boston, before July 14th, someone will go to Miami to find you. Please wait for him. This is the request of the future President of the United States. Lorraine's eyes lit up. It seems that you have gained more than I expected. Mr. President, investing in America may be the best decision I have made since I started business. I will make it your best decision. That is great. Chapter 558. You won't. Whether the two parties are willing or not, it's true that brothers reunite after years of separation. Lorraine and Shaq last met at the Royal Naval Dockyard in Bermuda, long before the smuggling operation began. That meeting didn't leave Lorraine with particularly good memories. After all, old Leonard, who had infiltrated, was caught red-handed and nearly suffered a mental breakdown from the confinement. Of course, this time around, there wouldn't be any good memories either. The Grand Saints did a 3,600-degree somersault and landed with 5 pillars towering before them, one of which was adorned with a sign that read no urinating or defecation. That's pretty much what it felt like. This is true power, like an invisible web that snares those caught unawares, stripping them of their options bit by bit. By the time they're finally aware, the possibility of resistance is long gone. Lorraine had always thought that lasting death was a pathetic term, but now she realized it was, in fact, the greatest blessing in disguise. She saw off Washington and the Americans on the other side, watching the Adams tremble as it trembled and joined the escort fleet, sailing away like a frightened rabbit. But the expected invitation never arrived. Lorraine seemed to see Shaq on the Neptune, hooking his finger, condescendingly telling him to get on board. Tisk. Crone, Leif, salvage the planking, cast off the cables, we're back to Miami, huh? The effect was remarkable. Before the Valkyrie could react to Lorraine's words, Commander Imani, who had been acting like a stern villain all day, emerged from the Neptune's side. Mr. President, are you serious? Decks in place. Crone strode to the center of the deck. Salvage the planking, cast off the cables, handle the mast. Look out, weather report, Catalina shouted. Winds from northeast and north, moderate wind, it was Hannah's voice. Hold the rudder, Bell stood at the wheel, glancing at Armani provocatively. Ready the schooners, hoist the sails after you've disengaged, pole up, Leif yelled. Prepare to disengage, ouch, Armani had never witnessed such vibrant and confusing human behavior in his life. The entire crew was fooling around with Lorraine. Were they serious? Did they really think the meeting was over, the mission complete? Could anyone see that the real fun was the next brotherly meeting? Hadn't Emmons already sent the invitation? Was it a false announcement? A cover-up? Or was Lorraine doing this on purpose? Armani panicked. He clung to the railing and shouted, Mr. President. The general is waiting for you. If you just leave like this, please be careful with your words, Mr. Lieutenant Colonel. We are serious businessmen. Even if this is the high seas, the captain can't refuse the invitation of an admiral. Carmen stood up with great momentum. But an invitation? Mr. Lieutenant Colonel, have you really issued an invitation? Invitation. Commodore Emmons, you know I'm asking about a formal invitation. Carmen raised her chin high. Why meet with us at the British and American diplomatic talks? Why let our employer abandon us? Why wait without invitation? We need a reasonable explanation. We will come to your door next time for this explanation. Carmen, take a break. Lieutenant Colonel Armani is about to cry. The sound of nature suddenly rang out. Lorraine stopped the crew members who were about to leave and stepped onto the Neptune's deck alone. Where's Shark, General? He's on the forecastle. Really? So relaxed, Lorraine muttered, turning back towards the forecastle, leaving the two ships staring at each other in bewilderment across the high gunnels. Ms. Xavier, right, Armani bravely asked. Do you think they can reconcile, if the parties involved don't want to? Not even God can force it, I know. It's just that it happened 10 years ago, Commander. I apologize for what happened just now, Carmen suddenly said. Armani was startled and quickly straightened his demeanor. Don't worry, Mom, we're all, regarding the invitation, although the captain has given up, please send the invitation as soon as possible. That's all, huh? Shark was there. Lorraine slowly stepped onto the Neptune's forecastle and saw Shark, with his back to him, gazing out to sea. He was still meticulously dressed in his uniform, as he had been at every meeting, with no guards around him. Standing in the corner with his briefcase, Emmons was the only outsider on deck. How should he begin? Lorraine took a deep breath. Your Excellency Mr. Tavistock, I haven't seen you for many years. I'm glad to see that you are in good health. You are not happy. Shaq turned around holding the railing. I thought that 6 years would allow you to grow a little bit, but in the end, I am very disappointed. I am even happier to hear you say that. Lorraine looked disgusted. Shaq Drake, do you know how much money your whim has cost me? If converted into a team of lawyers, that money can allow you to welcome the turn of the century in the traveling court, and you will have no time to rest. It seems that you really haven't changed your habit of bluffing. Shaq looked at Lorraine quietly, neither laughing nor angry. First of all, it is not easy to find a reason for me to appear in court in person. Tavistock is not the Queen of Portugal. A mere businessman is no different from an ant in my eyes. Secondly, today's admonition will not make you lose business, but will make the country guys more dependent on you. My stupid brother, you should be grateful, Tisk. To make a long story short, my time is precious. Shaq shook his collar. I have brought 3 commissions, one from Great Britain, one from the Admiralty and the Naval Academy, and you need to complete them. Oh? Why should I complete them? Is it because they can make Tavistock's authority more stable? Because you will be paid? Shaq said, I can answer some of your questions, and I can swear to God that there will be no lies or misleading in my answers. This is indeed a reward that cannot be refused. Lorraine's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. It was because Shaq proposed a deal that could not be refused that Lorraine was in a particularly bad mood. Money first, goods later, money first, goods later. I said my time is precious and I don't have time to wait for you to pay me. Okay, Lorraine bit her lip lightly. Belgium's identity, a dog. Lorraine frowned. I am not satisfied with this answer. He is a dog who was once employed by Tavistock. I need a pair of reliable eyes to prevent you from doing stupid things that will damage the family's reputation. What was the result? He did a very bad job, so he was abandoned. Abandoned. Lorraine stared into Shaq's eyes. I have learned about your confidence. Since even Terramani has become the captain of the Neptune. I guess you must be short of available people around you. Beljadia is on the Valkyrie. If you need him, I can return him to you now. I don't need him, Shaq said without hesitation. He failed to stop you from ruining the family's reputation, so he was abandoned by me. In order to prevent problems before they happen, I publicly voted against the restoration of the Jadia family's title. And if you hadn't persuaded Archbishop Warwick to intervene in this matter, I almost succeeded. Is that true? Lorraine was caught off guard. Jadia didn't tell you, did she? It seems even a stray dog has dignity. But this isn't a secret. If you're willing to verify it, you can always find evidence. I'll use my own methods to verify it. With that, Belle's question was essentially answered. Since Shaq had promised not to lie, Lorraine was willing to believe him. But the truth was far more cruel than Lorraine had imagined. To sever his ties with Belle, Shaq had used the most extreme and sharpest blade, transforming the young man he had helped into an enemy, forever and ever. A stray dog. For the first time, Lorraine felt the term perfectly apt for Belle. He couldn't even imagine the depth of the pain Belle suffered at Shaq's betrayal, how he had licked his wounds on the return ship, mending his remaining dignity and hiding it from Lorraine. You're still the same jerk you always were, Baron. Lorraine's voice was indescribably erratic. Belle's experience reminded him of Helena. In that damp and dilapidated little house, Helena weakened and died little by little in the pain of illness and the death of her lover. Lorraine at that time could do nothing, and that feeling of powerlessness was exactly the same as it is now. One day, maybe I will kill you, you won't. Shaq opened his mouth, but no sound came out of his throat. He realized his loss of composure and moved his eyes away without a trace. The reward has been paid. Now is the commission. Please count your goods clearly. Merchants will not let emotions influence business, Baron. Now, please give me my list of goods. Chapter 559 Hurting Each Other. The first commission was a proposal from the Minister of the Navy before the King. His Majesty has ordered the Ministers of Finance and Commerce to jointly implement it, and I will convey it on his behalf. Shaq's opening statement was a nuclear explosion. A simple commission involved a king and 3 ministers, and even required the admiral to run errands and convey it. What a hassle. Where's the content of the commission? Emin should have conveyed it to you long ago. The question is, when do you plan to implement it? The mushroom cloud of the nuclear explosion immediately wilted. Involving the king and the navy, it was a commercial matter, and it had been conveyed by Emmons. There was no doubt that this commission was about the maritime group settling in England. What a surprise. Lorraine rolled his eyes. Baron, do you know how much work is required before a project worth over £100,000 can begin? 100,000, surprising? A humble merchant suddenly receiving the attention of His Majesty the King would, of course, while violating his conscience and shouting that it's too much to bear, offer his all in devotion. The Drake Chamber of Commerce is just such an insignificant chamber of commerce. His Majesty's project was launched as early as the end of March. The project team consisted of 27 elites, led by Ramos Pittock, president of the European branch, with Humphreys, chief designer of the Maritime Group, and Terentran, chief accountant of the Asset Management Company, as deputy team leaders. They sailed to Europe on April 3 and arrived in Southampton 19 days later. My requirements for them were to first select a site along the channel, complete the land purchase and shipyard design, and then communicate with the Ministry of Commerce and the Navy headquarters to complete the subsequent registration of the shipyard, modify the design, and build and put the factory into production. The whole process would take about 2 years. Shaq was clearly dissatisfied. Why didn't you communicate with the Ministry of the Navy first? Of course it's because of different needs. Lorraine chuckled mockingly. For a noble like you, responding to His Majesty's expectations and attending to social needs are always the top priorities, with financial gain often taking a back seat, but Drake is in business. No matter what the nobles need, we must first make a profit. Excessive concern for the upper class will make us cannon fodder. Making money is hard. I don't want to offend most of my peers and end up becoming the fertile soil for a revolution in British shipbuilding. First commission, got it. Although Shaq would rather Lorraine treat this opportunity as a political investment rather than a commercial one, he wouldn't say it, and Lorraine wouldn't listen even if he did. So he wisely chose to keep quiet and move on to the second commission. The riots in the North American colonies cost the main powers on both sides of the war, Great Britain and France, a huge price. You should have heard some rumors. Although you don't want to admit it, those news are basically true. In order to alleviate financial difficulties and encourage private donations, Louis V is preparing to reopen the three-level parliament, and the bourgeoisie is jubilant, Lorraine said with an inexplicable smile. Britain is troubled by war debts and is forced to declare the coming of peace. A large number of ships are planned to be withdrawn into the reserve in order to free up the establishment and achieve large-scale disarmament. These rumors are all true, Emmons. Shaq did not answer Lorraine directly, but called his most trusted subordinate and asked him to take out a thick stack of documents from the file bag. Large-scale disarmament has already begun, Shaq said. Someone has proposed a wise plan, arguing that in peacetime, warships can be operated without full staffing. The three fleets of the Channel, Home, and North Sea are the hardest hit areas of this disarmament. A large number of young officers with valuable war experience who should have been promoted have been either drafted into the reserve or asked to retire. People are panicking and morale is collapsing, as the Royal Navy's most important training base for mid- and lower-level officers, Plymouth Naval Academy, has borne the brunt of the impact. A large number of graduates have been forced to be unemployed, and the Naval Academy's Veterans Security Fund can no longer cover their living expenses. Lorraine blew a loud whistle. Yo, just like I said, you're eating up all the resources. Shaq patted the stack of documents in his hand. My junior at the Naval Academy told me that you are the double champion of single donations and total donations since the establishment of the Security Fund, donating £10,000 at a time, and achieving two major achievements at the same time. Lorraine was immersed in the memories of the past. At that time I told them that the foundation should focus on the disabled classmates and the families of the classmates who died in the war. The useless people who lost their ability to make a living after leaving the army are not worthy of sympathy. In addition, the foundation needs to hire professional investment personnel and learn to increase the value steadily, and cannot rely solely on donations. What's the result? The result, that group of philanthropists value glory as much as you do and hate profit-making. I parted ways with them. That donation was the last and only time. A look of appreciation flashed in Shaq's eyes, very dim and fleeting. He waved the document in his hand to Lorraine. It seems that they still have hope for you. Lorraine took the document and flipped it open casually. Resume. All the officers who retired from active service in the Naval Academy in the past 5 years, a total of 87 colonels, 363 lieutenants, and 27 people with disabilities, but it does not affect their operations on the ship. The Naval Academy hopes that you will accept them. Let me raise a bunch of trash instead of them. These people have all had outstanding performances in the Army. The real trash has been eliminated. The one in charge of the screening is your mentor, Sir Leighton. The first good news today, Lorraine muttered. Within 3 months, let all these people report to the fleet headquarters in Miami, and pay for their own travel expenses. I will arrange a 3-month on-the-job training for them, and then a 1-year internship. After 1 year, up to 80% of them will be retained based on the internship evaluation. Shaq looked at Lorraine dissatisfiedly. What if each of them performs very competently? Drake's internship evaluations are based on a 100-point system, accurate to 2 decimal places, and the average of 3 evaluations is taken. Furthermore, if a single evaluation differs from the average by more than 5, I will deduct the difference from the evaluator's year-end bonus, using this profit to reduce favoritism and victimization during the evaluation process. It's not necessarily fair, but at least it's objective and truthful. Most importantly, there hasn't been a single tie in this evaluation system in 3 years. Even the slightest difference will always be a difference, unrealistic, but objective. Shaq looked a little dazed, the arrogance and indifference he had cultivated over the years crumbling at a visible pace. He suddenly said, after you disembark, have your people hand in the evaluation details and the evaluation report you have. I want them, too. Sorry, what? The subject changed so quickly that Lorraine almost thought he was hallucinating. But it wasn't. Shaq squinted, finding Lorraine's gaze, and spoke word by word. Evaluation details and the evaluation report. Things seemed to have taken a completely unrelated and strange turn. Shaq Francis Drake, White Flag Admiral of the British Royal Navy, Commander-in-Chief of the North American Fleet, hereditary Baron Tavistock of England, Lorraine's elder brother, closest relative, and murderer of his mother. Lorraine knew most of this man, his awful personality, his mediocre talents, and even more so, his strange soul, a tangle of weakness, inferiority, and impulsiveness. He also had his merits. As a traditional English aristocrat meticulously nurtured from childhood, he was rigid, stiff, and reserved. While he valued order and loyalty, he also retained the greed that fueled his progress. His greed was Lorraine. Thanks to memories from another time and space, Lorraine had occasionally come up with advanced methods and novel perspectives since his youth. Shaq was fascinated by these things, revealing his greedy face whenever he encountered them, regardless of the occasion, wanting to absorb them and evolve himself. But that was a story from the past. Lorraine used to be willing to share with Shaq without any resentment, even actively showing off, enjoying the mediocre but loving brother's gradual rise to prominence, breaking out of his shell. But now, why? Lorraine, pushed and squeezed by the familiar atmosphere, desperately suppressed the okay that was stuck in his throat, and even forgot to pay attention to controlling his expression, continuing to maintain a hypocritical and distant appearance that even a blind person could detect. "Honorable sir, can't you respect yourself a little?" Shaq's eyes were faintly red. "You must understand the value of this evaluation criteria, no matter adaptability, performance, expertise, performance, or superior to subordinate, subordinate to superior, same level but different types. It is not necessary to be limited to 3 evaluations and 1, because no matter how you evaluate, the final result is the average. It can change the lazy atmosphere in the army. As long as it is used properly, it can broaden the horizons of senior officers to the maximum extent, so that they are no longer blinded by bloodline and distance." "Don't you really understand?" "I understand." Lorraine had a blank expression. "So, why should I give it to you?" Shaq froze in place. His enthusiasm dissipated bit by bit, and slowly returned to the original. "I got married." "Huh? I got married last year," he said calmly. "Anne's family is an important Catholic leader in London. And her father is an influential non-partisan and opposition figure in front of the king. No one blessed our marriage, but when we fell in love at first sight in that royal hunting ground, at that moment, I felt what my father was thinking back then. Anne betrayed her family. She left rainy and warm London with her maid and followed me to cold Newfoundland. I know you don't care about these, but if contact with those country bumpkins is not enough to make you forget social etiquette, I will be the most dominant maritime power in North America in the future, and you are a merchant, and I haven't received your wedding gift yet." "Ah, ha." This reason was too perfect. Lorraine grinned and counted his fingers. "Great Britain is interested in the shipbuilding technology of the maritime group, and my project team has landed in England with the gold pounds. My alma mater hopes that I will take care of the alumni who have no food or clothing. Those who are good for nothing but fighting will become employees of the Chamber of Commerce. There is only one of the 3 shipments left to be delivered, but it seems that the client is not you, but the Admiralty. Your Excellency, politely speaking, your behavior is called bribery, but I can't find any reason to bribe you. This situation is often called self-righteousness among businessmen, which is a derogatory term. Please save us time. Every minute I delay here will cause several gold coins to slip out of my pocket. In my opinion, you are not worth it." The wind rose like a knife, cutting through the gap between Lorraine and Shaq, cutting everything into pieces and sending it flying like scattered flowers. Shaq held the railing motionless, only the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "A pure businessman. Emmons, bring him up." "Yes, General." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560 Happy Wedding. He was an acquaintance. Perhaps because she'd been a bit too emotional today, seeing him ascend the stairs with such grace, his face, more delicate than most women's, smiling effortlessly in the bright sun, matching the sky and sea, Lorraine remained completely calm, her poker face perfectly composed. John Leshed, formerly of the 8th Company, 52nd Regiment, New England Garrison, captain of the Rogue Company, Lorraine's land partner during Operation Halloween, a femme fatale, a master of playing chess with a human heart. He lifted his foot, his brand new leather boots clacking firmly against a foredeck, his bright red uniform flapping in the breeze. When Feng Jingyi stopped, he bowed slightly to Shaq. "Report, John Leshed is summoned." Shaq nodded coldly, pointing at him and saying to Lorraine, "You have worked together for a long time, so there's no need for an introduction. Lieutenant Colonel Leshed now works for the Royal Secret Service. You will need to assist him in gaining access to the Sanctuary Hill auction in Boston. The Admiralty needs one of the items, and this is the assignment. It was straightforward and concise. Lorraine was pleased to discover that Shaq was now very upset, the reason being his previous remarks. He had said everything and yet nothing. The assignment was somewhat unexpected for Lorraine. From the limited information available, Leshad had changed his affiliation and was now affiliated with the Royal Secret Service, presumably a legitimate spy. While spies' ranks mirror those of the army, they are not under the jurisdiction of the War Department. Judging from the Royal Secret Service's publicly disclosed personnel, Lieutenant Colonel should be a very high-ranking position, at least ahead of a major intelligence station. Lorraine needed to cooperate with him in gaining access to the Sanctuary Hill auction. This meant his cover wasn't enough to gain access to the auction, while Lorraine's was. Therefore, the Sanctuary Hills auction was most likely a clandestine sale targeting wealthy individuals, where anything was sold. Furthermore, the Admiralty likely didn't want its purchases known, at least not the identity of the buyer. This meant, the item was a sensitive item that could easily cause a diplomatic dispute. Would that expose Rashid's identity? Was it an anonymous auction? Or was the item worthy of a spy of Rashid's caliber abandoning his cover? What could it be? Lorraine cast a probing glance at Shaq, but Shaq didn't even look at him. You will arrange the specific contact details yourselves. Commander Leshad will also inform you of the auction details. Retrieve the items and get the commander safely out of Boston. That's your job. Any more questions? If I must, my mind is full of them. But never mind. After all, the venerable master is no longer in the mood for conversation, so we commoners should be tactful and take our leave. Lorraine patted his chest and bowed dramatically. I am returning to my ship, my Lord Tavistock. I wish you peace, health, and prosperity in your military career. With that, Lorraine turned and left without a second thought. Watching him return to the Valkyrie from the deck, Leshad, who had remained silent since his arrival, finally spoke. What's the budget? The appraiser's minimum estimate is £60,000, and the Admiralty has squeezed out a budget of £100,000, but my suggestion to you is £120,000. The finances are very difficult. And this is the real limit, £120,000. Leshad was astonished. Even if it's just an advance payment, are you sure Lorraine Drake will believe my lies about getting something for nothing? My brother is different from those lowly businessmen you know. He has different financial resources and different knowledge. Shaq lowered his eyelids proudly. You don't have to go to great lengths to weave lies, it's just a waste of effort. What you need to do is very simple, tell the truth, and then let him judge for himself. Don't worry, he won't let us down. Leshad laughed jokingly. The general trusts his brother so much, but was rejected, right? That is a very interesting evaluation criteria. That's a private matter. Shaq turned around and looked at the sea of clouds in the distance. Private and public affairs should be handled clearly. He hates me, but he doesn't hate Great Britain. Well, is that so? Lorraine stretched and returned to the Valkyrie. Carmen, Karen, and Catalina soon came over. It was quite a long time. What did you talk about? Karen asked softly. I did a deal, and if nothing goes wrong, I'll make a small profit. If nothing goes wrong, because there's still a shipment left to be delivered, and the consignee is a troublesome guy. Lorraine licked his lips. Catalina, prepare to disengage. We have one last guest, and it's time to leave after we pick them up. Kren and Catalina nodded and turned to arrange the disengagement. The ship quickly became lively. Carmen stood beside Lorraine, watching the bustling traffic on the deck. Belgiodia, have you gotten to know him? It seems he's been dragged into some boring stuff that he originally had nothing to do with. Lorraine looked for Belle. Is he still resting? On his shift, because the alert level has been lowered to 4, let him fulfill his duties as a seaman. Lorraine pouted. With the steering, piloting, and the quarterdeck crew, there's no reason for him to be absent from the deck even on his shift. Carmen quickly drafted the reinstatement order on paper and handed the writing board to Lorraine for his signature. After taking a break for half a year, it must be too much pressure for him to return to his post all at once. He owes a huge debt. How can he pay it back if he doesn't work? But Valkyrie sailors don't get job allowances, right? I thought only Kren would say such a thing. Lorraine raised his eyebrows in a strange way. Hard work is the best way for people to escape the reality of being burdened with huge debts. This is the care of capitalists for their employees. I will hand over the reinstatement order to him personally. Carmen put away the writing board. Carmen, I remember you said some time ago that you received a gift in Rome that is very suitable for ladies. Michelangelo Buonarroti's life-size Madonna. suitable for worship in a private chapel. It's still a little small to be placed in the cathedral. Carmen nodded her chin and thought for a while. Do you need me to pack it? Yes, pack it and send it to Mrs. Anne Drake in Newfoundland and Channel Basque. Also, have someone compile our valuation criteria and the more qualified evaluation reports in the past 3 years into a book and send it over with a Madonna, MRS. Anne Drake, Carmen muttered in a low voice, her eyes completely smiling into crescents. Our evaluation method seems quite complicated at first glance. How about letting the Performance Supervision Department organize a tutorial for new employees? Lorraine avoided his gaze guiltily. Your subordinates, you arrange it, where's the message? Just say, thank you for not despising that selfish idiot. Lorraine thought for a while. Also, happy wedding, I'm so nervous to meet my fellow Alliance leader for the first time in years of writing. Thank you, Nadeshiko-chan, for your kindness and reward. Next, I'm preparing to update. Since I don't have enough manuscripts in time, it'll probably take a few days, but I'm still so shameless, so please stay tuned. Finally, thank you again, I'm truly humbled. Chapter 561 I like to paint in my dreams. This island is called Outer Gloucester, located at the eastern mouth of Massachusetts Bay. It is the outermost island of the Gloucester Archipelago and the private territory of the Morgan family of Boston. Sanctuary is located here. In 1688, after the death of pirate King Henry Morgan, the second generation of Morgan moved to Boston and bought this island. Legend has it that he provided services to pirates through the secret shipyard on the island, while receiving top-notch stolen goods and making profits by reselling them. However, this statement has never been confirmed. The Morgan family's industries are all well documented. Although not as wealthy as your Drake Chamber of Commerce, they also have an annual profit of more than £100,000. The Back Bay shipyard is the core industry of the Morgan family, with an annual output value of more than £400,000. The net profit in the past 3 years has also been more than £50,000. When Lashid's introduction came to this point, Kren rarely interrupted. 400,000 output value and £50,000 net profit, isn't that a bit low for an old shipyard whose main source of ship materials is its own forest farm? Lashid glared at him unhappily. Before 1783, the average profit of Boston's Back Bay was more than 30%. You are so familiar with your business rivals, don't you know why their profit margins have declined? Oh, is it because of us? It's the Maritime Group. Lashid let out a long breath. Ever since the Maritime Group launched clippers of more than 13 knots, the shipbuilding industry in Back Bay and even the entire New World has been impacted. There are only two things they can do. The first is to increase investment in design and launch high-speed ship models that can compete with you. The second is to reduce the price of shipbuilding. Even if the new ship model cannot surpass you in data, it must surpass you in cost-effectiveness. Lorraine rolled his eyes when he heard it. Please organize your words carefully before you speak. It's not us who are disrupting the shipping market. After all, the core business of the Drake Chamber of Commerce is maritime trade. We have never lowered the price of ships. Even new ship models that have passed sea trials will be preheated in the Beishang Association first, because freight dividends are what I value. I know. The shipbuilding industry in the New World is no match for you. Thank you for leaving them room to survive. Lashid poked the sea chart impatiently. Let's get back to the topic. Today's focus is Sanctuary Villa. Like you, the Morgan family was able to rule the Back Bay not because of the shipyard. Their ancestors were role models of lawless people, and as descendants, their wealth cannot be called clean. In 1714, the third generation Morgan built Sanctuary Villa in Outer Rush. At the inauguration ceremony of the manor, he successfully organized a high-standard underground auction. A total of 16 items were sold at that auction, with a total turnover of £1.02 million. Morgan took 10% of the commission, and earned a full £100,000 in just one day. 3 years later, in 1717, the third generation of Morgan, having tasted the sweetness of success, organized a second auction, which sold 22 items for a total turnover of £1.27 million. After that, the Sanctuary Hill auction became the core industry of the Morgan family. It is held every 3 years, with only 24 invitations issued each time. Thanks to the reputation of the Morgan family and the unique structure of Sanctuary Hill, the identities of buyers and sellers are best protected, and there has never been a precedent for leaks. Lorraine raised his eyelids in surprise. Never. In other words, anything can be sold there, and anything can be bought from there, right? Yes, Leshid nodded solemnly. The Sanctuary Hill auction is the world's highest level and most secretive underground auction. That's where we are going. This year is the 25th, and it will be held on July 20th. July 20th, Lorraine pondered for a moment. There are still 35 days. Have you got the invitation? What a joke. Did your brother say that it is your job to bring me into the venue? You don't even have an invitation. There are only 24 in total. Leshid stretched out his hands and opened them in front of Lorraine. Do you think a low-key tutor could get that kind of thing? Low-key tutor? Leshid puffed out his chest proudly. This action made Katerina and Yatrin's eyes light up at the same time beside the nautical chart. Yatrin perked up and was about to ask a question when Belle, who had returned to the decision-making circle after 6 months, suddenly said, I can't understand what items in this underground auction could possibly attract the attention of the Navy headquarters. Could it be the legendary certificate of dominance of the Seven Seas? Or a nautical chart leading to Atlantis? It's the blueprints, Leshid said softly, looking at Lorraine until she nodded. The complete blueprints for the standard 1770 French third-class battleship, the Furious, the main battleship currently in service in the French Navy. The Navy has received word that it will definitely appear in this year's auction catalog, a thunderclap. If there was a single, core secret of a warship, it would undoubtedly be its complete blueprints. Unlike ordinary shipbuilding blueprints, complete blueprints include initial drafts, revised drafts, tests of flow, sail motion, and balance, the designer's handwritten notes, and perhaps even reports from several internal sea trials. These are truly precious treasures. In the hands of a skilled designer, they can easily reconstruct the design of an entire ship, or even a whole class of ships, and understand the value and function of every component. In particular, the Furious is a standard 1770 French battleship. As the world's finest third-tier battleship design, the standard 1770 French design is the basis for the third-tier battleships of all major naval powers today. Almost all new third-tier battleships are designed based on it. However, because no complete blueprints have ever been released, countries' efforts to copy it have been limited to salvaging sunken ships and analyzing captured vessels, lacking key design insights. As a result, the performance of the final French ship remains unique. The value of this blueprint is no less than that of any French national treasure today. More accurately, it is one of the national treasures, and it is well deserved. Bell opened his mouth in shock. Complete design drawings. How is that possible? Are the French crazy? Probably crazy. Crazy because of poverty. Lorraine, who learned the details 2 hours before his crew, shrugged helplessly. During the War of Independence, or the North American Rebellion, France supported the American Revolution with all its strength, including sending troops and smuggling. France undertook most of the offensive and defensive battles on the land front and almost all of the naval fronts. It paid a huge price for 5 years but did not ask for corresponding returns. They are selfless because the Americans couldn't afford it and the British were unwilling to pay. His philanthropic Majesty Louis probably considered the profits from smuggling. However, what he didn't expect was that most of the profits from this line were divided up by the powerful and wealthy, and the national treasury was unable to make ends meet. France's financial difficulties were greater than those of Britain and the United States combined. After the war, the wise Queen Marie believed that peace had come. Compared to ensuring wasteful and corrupt military spending, she preferred to use the limited funds on the cutting edge, such as the gorgeous palace, her jewelry, and His Majesty Louis's favorite locks. A large amount of France's military funds have been misappropriated, and the situation of the Navy and the Army is similar. However, the Queen has omitted one thing. She is too kind and unwilling to make drastic disarmament cuts. In short, the redundant army has to support itself with limited military funds, and all kinds of strange things will happen. These things include but are not limited to collecting special taxes at the garrison, actively seeking sponsorship from local financial tycoons, losing expensive weapons during low-intensity training, and fires at bases for unknown reasons. 3 months ago, an accidental fire broke out at the Cherbourg Naval Base, resulting in 7 deaths, 62 injuries, and 3 missing persons. The fire spread to the base archives, and a small number of confidential files were burned, including the design drawings of the Fury. A month and a half ago, there was news that a talented painter drew the burned design drawings while sleepwalking and decided to auction them at the Asylum Villa. That's all the information the Admiralty has received, Lorraine drawled. I heard our intelligence officer had the privilege of seeing some of the artist's sleepwalking sketches. He commented that the dream was remarkably complete, with the artist's drawing skills comparable to those of a professional designer. They even thoughtfully aged the paper, making it look like it's been sealed in an archive for years. It's quite collectible, Belle gaped. How could the artist be so skilled? Who says he isn't? Lorraine pouted. It's a shame he dreamed of a design drawing with such a high level of skill. How wonderful it would have been if he'd dreamed of the Mona Lisa. Chapter 562 Buying a casket and seeking a pearl. The Valkyrie sailed westward, not directly to Boston. Instead, under the pretense of a supply mission, it turned toward Cape Cod Bay, adjacent to Massachusetts Bay, and anchored in the outer anchorage of Provincetown Harbor at the bay's mouth. The second group will be on standby duty aboard, the third group will be on shore for purchases, and the remaining crew will have 2 hours of free time. Departure roll call will be promptly at 3:30 p.m. We'll enter Boston tonight, Catalina shouted from the deck. Yes, the launch was slowly launched at the sailor's command. Lorraine, Belle, and Leshad, now in civilian clothes, stood alongside. Belle, Mr. Lieutenant Colonel has infiltrated your group. You are responsible for getting rid of him. Belle scratched his head helplessly. Is it because I look particularly unreliable? It's good that you know yourself. Lorraine grinned. We are going to Boston, and the Americans also landed in Boston. The crew list of Valkyrie before sailing was reported to the United States. One more or one less, if someone checks it, it will be exposed, which may affect the mutual trust between us. We must prevent problems before they happen. Rashid was warming up on the side. I will land in Provincetown and return to Boston about a day later than you. In another 5 days, that is, on June 22nd, you send someone to Evelyn's Natural Flower Shop on Wesley Street in the North District. I will tell you the location of the invitation, and you are responsible for persuading the original holder. Understood? Lorraine stretched. I'm best at persuading people. This is one of the reasons why the Admiralty chose you, Mr. Mourner of the Sultan of Muscat. I am deeply honored. Sunset, moonrise. On the night of June 16, 1786, hoisting a white flag with a pansy rose, the Valkyrie glided across Boston's forebay, riding the evening breeze as it entered the bustling Back Bay docks for the second time since its commissioning. A wanderer returns home. Guided by the pilot's light, the proudest child of Boston's shipbuilding industry furled its sails and slowly moored at the private berth of the Haight shipyard. This berth, known as Haight's Great Berth No. 3, is renowned in Back Bay. Built of standard stone, it measures 140 meters long and 62 meters wide, with a depth of 15.5 meters. To mitigate underwater siltation, it is paved with stone and flanked by silt walls. While it is certainly not Boston's largest or longest berth, its design, with only 2 stacks and 2 berths, far exceeds the berthing requirements of any current vessel, demonstrating Drake Maritime's ultimate ambition, to build a super-large ship with twice the data parameters of the Valkyrie. Whether this ambition is realistic given current shipbuilding standards, or whether the Haight shipyard possesses the necessary infrastructure to build a ship of this size, is beyond question. The key lies in the fact that the seemingly impractical proposal for Berth 3 actually passed the Drake Board's project approval process, undergoing site selection, investment, and 2 years of construction. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony late last year, Boston's shipbuilding industry experienced a true spiritual elevation. Even illiterate dock workers no longer believe that Europe is the eternal center of world shipbuilding. Britain, France, and Spain may represent the past and present of shipbuilding, but Boston represents the future, and should represent it. Dock, anchor dropped. Planks lowered. Lorraine strolled down the deck and met Edmund Haight, who had been waiting for him on the boardwalk. Lorraine greeted him with a smile. What nice weather, Manager Haight. Boston in summer is humid and sunny. It is one of the most livable places in the world. If the chairman comes here more often, he will definitely fall in love with his town. Really? Lorraine stopped on the solid bluestone plank road under his feet. I heard that Big Berth No. 3 has become a symbol. It should be said that it is Boston's new beacon. Haight stood beside Lorraine excitedly, dancing with joy as if he was presenting a treasure. Although it's only a 2-stack, 2-berth marina, this is undoubtedly the most advanced marina in the world and represents the future direction of marina development. Chairman, look, every 10 meters on the plank road are distance measuring streetlights, their pillars brightly painted, and deep gas pipelines buried underground. During the day, we use color lampposts to mark distances, and at night, gas lamps atop the pillars mark distances and provide lighting for incoming ships. In addition, we've built a pilot tower between the 2 plank roads. This 30-meter-tall tower allows pilots to guide incoming ships from 20 kilometers away. Of course, because we're a private marina, this feature isn't used often. It's mostly used to assist the lighthouse in guiding ships to evacuation during foggy days. There's also a steam crane and a steam drawbridge. The former can provide towing, maintenance, and loading and unloading services for large ships, while the latter can temporarily close the plank road or drain the berths at low tide to facilitate silt removal. This is a supermarina of the future. Automated, mechanized, and functional. Even if the standards were lowered by half, there's nothing like it in the world. Hatter was excited, while Lorraine scratched his nose awkwardly. Calm down, Manager Hatter. Even the best docks are just accessories. The key is the ship. Even a Valkyrie would look a bit shabby docked like this. Hatter's face flushed crimson. He wasn't familiar with Lorraine. For reasons of confidentiality, most of the Drake merchants' partners, with the exception of a few, were unaware of Lorraine's relationship with Kenway. To Hatter, Lorraine was Kenway's successor, wealthier, more generous, and more decisive than Kenway, but far less easygoing. His only consolation was Lorraine's higher regard for the former Kenway merchants. Both Cran, who had become Hatter's close friend, and Carmen, whom Hatter had always disliked, were given important positions under Lorraine's leadership. Thanks to them, Hatter was able to demonstrate his abilities in the few meetings he had, quickly establishing a strong sense of trust with his new boss. Had he messed up this time? Hatter's anxiety overtook him, and as he glanced around, he happened to see Carmen disembarking. Why did it have to be this woman? Carmen got off the boat and walked to Lorraine with a smile. My captain, what are you talking about? We are talking about the Big Berth number 3. Lorraine shrugged. Manager Haight is introducing me to the amazing features of the Big Berth. Carmen squinted her eyes and pretended to be surprised. Could it be the world's top berth again? Haight's face turned redder. Because of his nervousness, the technician's clumsiness was undoubtedly revealed. It's the best, Manager Xavier. I only know that a beautiful jewelry box can set off jewelry, but I've never heard of a jeweler bragging about the jewelry box itself, Carmen joked. Manager Haight, the board of directors approved the proposal to build a large berth because they trust that our master craftsmen can overcome the Dreadnought project and the Clipper project, and you happen to be the leader of the Clipper project. You are not proud of such a noble title, but you come to promote an empty stone pier. Manager Haight, are you using your confidence in the wrong place? It will succeed. Haight clenched his fists. We will definitely build a 100-meter class, 20-knot pure wind-powered Clipper sailboat. These are the 3 giants of the maritime group that I have high hopes for. Lorraine patted Haight's arm with satisfaction. Take us to the mansion. I have to stay in Boston for a long time this time. There is a long way to go. Yes. Chairman, please come this way. Late at night, Beacon Hill, ghosts are everywhere. A voice said, did you just see the flag of the White Flag Pirate King, the new generation overlord of the Caribbean? I only saw a face of mockery and disdain. The second voice replied. Mockery? Disdain? The third voice laughed. This is probably the funniest joke I've heard this year, isn't it? The second voice retorted loudly. He replaced the black flag with a white flag and the skull with flowers, which is to tell everyone that he is trying to establish a new order for the Caribbean pirate empire, just like the Emperor and the Black Baron back then. In fact, it's not quite the same. The third voice continued. He still uses the colorful skull as his pirate flag. In Europe and Africa, Drake's ship flag is no different from before, only in the New World did his ship completely abandon the colorful skull. I guess this is an expression of his position. He wants to be completely opposed to us. However, our cowardly brother arbitrarily declared the white flag as his new skull flag, as if as long as he is recognized as a pirate, he will abide by the constraints of the code like us. Cowardly? The first voice sighed. The Brotherhood is corrupt. Blackbeard and the Black Baron are also frightened by the white flag, and that traitor. Have you found Bellamy? We only found the stranded Vida, and Bellamy and his people are gone. The third voice replied. I said before that he can't be trusted, and recruiting him is a very bad move. I just want to gather as much useful forces as possible. The first voice roared. Who would have thought that Bellamy would object? You should have thought of his connection with the Brotherhood. The third voice sneered. But now it's useless to talk. By ZHI's being alone this time may be our last chance, and we must not make any mistakes. See you in 10 days. The second voice rolled up his sleeves. Black Prince Bellamy, that alien, I will deal with it. Chapter 563 Ordinary Love. As the 25th Sanctuary auction approached, All manner of insidious figures emerged from the far corners of the world, each with their own agenda, converging on Boston's bay. Lorraine could guess, anticipated, but had no intention of doing anything about it. After all, this time, he was partnering with the world's most advanced and sophisticated intelligence organization. The Royal Secret Service had long overseen the internal security of Great Britain, a loyal hound of the realm since the reign of Queen Elizabeth. It held immense power and numerous informants. These spies' actions in Boston were undoubtedly beyond their authority, but considering what Lorraine knew of Rashid's character and past, his acceptance of this unconventional assignment only proved their thorough preparation. Although Rashid hadn't stated it explicitly, Boston must possess a comprehensive, highly motivated, and trusted team of spies. These professionals were undoubtedly far more efficient in gathering intelligence than Lorraine's half-baked salesmen, and Rashid would likely share most of the valuable information, as both parties now had no vested interests and enjoyed a purely cooperative relationship. Because of this, as the executor of this commission, Lorraine had ample time to attend to personal matters before their first meeting. These matters, of course, were American business. Before parting ways, Washington informed Lorraine that Hamilton would wait for Lorraine at the Solomon Chamber of Commerce in Back Bay for a week. They parted ways on June 15, and this uncertain week would last at least until June 22. There was still plenty of time. In the luxurious mansion at the Hayte shipyard, Lorraine and the crew slept soundly on solid land. It wasn't until dawn the next day that Lorraine summoned Carmen and Karen to the study. "Karen, do you know where the Solomon Chamber of Commerce is?" The Solomon Chamber of Commerce. Karen's mind immediately conjured the beautiful, capable figure of Miss Izzy Solomon. "Yes, they're our main supplier of ship materials and large component fabricators. I've never been there before, but Edmund pointed them out to me on the way to ball." "Edmund?" Lorraine was confused. "Edmund Hayte, one of your big three and the leader of the Clipper project." "We are friends, you can't expect me to call him by his last name." "Aha." Carmen glanced at Lorraine. "Could it be that my captain misses the beautiful daughter of Solomon? He went to see Alexander." Lorraine glared back unhappily. "Washington said he would wait for us at the Solomon Chamber of Commerce for a week. Naval revitalization plan, probably," Lorraine said uncertainly. Logically, such a big order should not be decided so hastily, but they were stimulated by Shark. If the stimulation is big enough, it is not impossible to be hasty. The expression on Karen's face was complicated, and it was hard to tell whether it was expectation or regret. "Well, I was drinking with Edmund last night, and I promised him that I would take you to visit the 1st and 5th docks." Lorraine immediately understood what Karen meant. The 2nd Valkyrie-class ship and the 2nd Valkyrie-class ship. Yes, the 2nd Valkyrie-class ship has passed the internal sea trial and is undergoing the final center of gravity adjustment. It will be sent to Bermuda for external sea trials in at most a month. Karen nodded. The Valkyrie class is progressing slower. They've just completed the hull assembly. The Bear ship will conduct sea trials in 15 days, and then they'll have to apply armor and copper plating. The New World still lacks excellent craftsmen in this area, so we have to go to Europe to find subcontractors. "What about ship equipment?" Lorraine waved his hand listlessly. "The combination of 18-pounders and 24-pounders simply can't bring out the value of a capital ship. I've always wondered if these two ships are too expensive to allocate to the American branch, but we can't get new 32-pounders and 48-pounders, can we?" Karen sighed distressedly. "These two ships are the backup ships for the Valkyrie and the Lady. It's not impossible to keep them in the dock for maintenance, but the waste of standby is more serious than allocating them to the American branch. Maybe we can try to get approval for the 24-pounder from the United States," Carmen suggested. "We can build the 24-pounder in our Miami gun factory. Once we have the approval from the United States, the British won't be too concerned when we equip the ship. Also, the Valkyrie and Lady's guns have been in service for several years. While there's been no major damage, we also have to consider the worst-case scenario. After all, we haven't been able to establish a stable inventory or replacement source." "What about the source of heavy artillery?" The conversation was dead. The sourcing of the 32-pounder and large-caliber mortars had always been a concern for Lorraine and the others. Legality aside, the two ships currently in service had already depleted their inventory, leaving only replacements for emergencies. There wasn't even enough to arm a third ship. This issue had become a significant obstacle to the Drake Chamber of Commerce's continued expansion of its private armaments, a shield without a spear. The current predicament couldn't be resolved with mere perseverance. The fate of the second Valkyrie, which was about to enter service, and the second Valkyrie class, which was even more expensive but not necessarily more powerful and was due to enter service in 1788 at the latest, were not decisions to be made hastily. While I had some free time, I thought about how to make money from American tycoons, which would be more satisfying. Lorraine knocked on the table. Solomon Chamber of Commerce, who wants to come with me? I'll go, Kren said quickly. Forget it. There's no need for rhetoric between the captain and Minister Hamilton, and I can't get a word in on the Navy's formation, Carmen pondered. It's rare to have so many girls on board this time. I'm going to work with them to make dresses. They'll need them for the auction, right? Few could have imagined that even within the formidable Lorraine team, Carmen's drive was second to none. She quickly persuaded Noah, Sharon, Katharina, and Fafner, then led them into Hannah's room. In a flash, they forcibly tied Hannah, who had no interest in shopping, into the carriage. The 6 women stormed toward Boston's downtown shopping street. By the time the dust settled, Lorraine and Kren hadn't finished preparing to leave. Another half hour later, the second carriage finally lurched out of the mansion's gates. Lorraine, leaning on her parachute, gazed with a quizzical expression at Kren's silver wig. If I remember correctly, you haven't worn a wig at the Christmas balls and annual meetings in recent years, right? One is an internal gathering, and the other is a business meeting. Since I represent the maritime group, I must be more serious, right? Really? It seems that we still don't know whether the Americans want to do business or to accuse them. Kren widened his eyes. Didn't you say? I said that the Americans were stimulated by Shaq. Since it is a stimulation, it is of course not surprising that they are motivated or angry. So you brought an umbrella sword. Lorraine paused the tip of the umbrella, knocking out a rhythmic thud. I brought a sword because I am a warrior. As long as conditions permit, a warrior will not abandon his weapon. But you, Miss Solomon, is she beautiful? Kren's face flushed. She, how should I put it? Beautiful, outstanding, and comes from a legendary family with a legendary father. But the reason I look at her differently is not these, but her attitude. A few days ago, in order to demonstrate the naval revitalization plan, you asked me to provide technical advice to the Americans. She was also incorporated into the demonstration team because of her family business. Her role in the team was basically the spokesperson and secretary for the 3 generals. Most of the time, she was the one organizing the complicated information and communicating with me about the content of the information. So, we were together most of the time during those days. A trace of memories flashed across Kren's face. You are such an outstanding lady, but you are not as arrogant and mean as Carmen, nor as unapproachable as Yesla. Even when facing an ordinary person like me, you can respect me from the bottom of your heart, and always take into account the sense of distance I want. You are meticulous, considerate, and in sync. Lorraine, I guess I may be in love. Kren raised his eyes. Although it is a bit wishful thinking, for the first time, I really have it. Hey. What's that expression on your face? What's that expression? Lorraine opened her big hands and rubbed her face hard, muttering, I won't talk about your evaluation of Carmen and Hannah. The key is you. I especially want to know what illusion makes you think you are ordinary. Isn't it? 2 meters tall, strong and powerful, the flagship craftsman of the Pirate King of the Caribbean, and the top administrator of the largest shipyard in the Americas. You are one of the 3 chief designers of Valkyrie, and your superb design skills have long been famous in the world with the Valkyrie. You're still a top-tier tycoon. Although I've never calculated your wealth, unlike Belle, who hunts scammers everywhere, Daniel, who hunts for medicine everywhere, and Acheron, who hunts for women everywhere, you don't have a particular penchant for spending money. Over the years, your net worth should be close to £100,000, right? Lorraine spread her fingers in front of Kren, cracking them one by one. World-class fame, world-class companies, a world-class team, top-notch talent and wealth, a figure that brings happiness to anyone just by looking at it. So, nothing special. Kren's mouth dropped open, and he let Lorraine pat his shoulder like a wooden chicken. Go after someone you like, Mr. Kren Scott. You're one of the finest men in the world. The Solomon family would only consider you marrying up, not down. Miss Izzy Solomon is yours. When faced with a love that's just ordinary, no lady can refuse. Chapter 564 Marrying. Visiting card, waiting. The address of the Solomon Chamber of Commerce is just 2 blocks away from the Heights shipyard. It didn't take too much time to drive there, and it didn't take too much time to wait there either. Not long after, Hamilton and Miss Solomon came out of the entrance together. Lorraine smiled and saluted them, saying softly, "Mr. President asked me to come here. I hope it's not because of my brother's rude behavior." "It is indeed related to your brother," Hamilton smiled back, "but don't worry, I'm not going to blame you. This is really great news." Lorraine raised his eyes to glance at Miss Solomon, who was hanging her head behind Hamilton, then glanced at the innocent bachelor beside him, who was at a loss and obviously a little too nervous, and couldn't help but sigh secretly. "Alexander, has the president handed this matter over to you and Miss Solomon?" Hamilton had no idea why Lorraine was asking that. "To be precise, it's an internal decision, and I'll be implementing it. Miss Solomon is the president's personal advisor. If she were to formally take on certain matters, she'd be vulnerable to criticism." "That's another piece of great news," Lorraine beamed. "Could Miss Solomon please show Karen around the Chamber of Commerce?" "Why?" Hamilton was even more puzzled. "Because we're likely to discuss a series of details like donations, bribes, and kickbacks. The fewer people involved, the better. Miss Solomon is superfluous, and so is Karen." Hamilton couldn't find any reason to object to the seemingly invincible answer. He could only say to Miss Solomon apologetically, "Miss Solomon, it seems I have to trouble you. Donating money is the best way." Miss Solomon replied solemnly, "Mr. Minister, the first presidential election will begin after the promulgation of the Constitution. Although the president has huge popularity in the 13 states, other candidates are not without the possibility of turning the tables. We need financial support like Mr. Drake to support the election." "I understand." The four people officially divided into two groups. Karen's group was the business group, and Lorraine's group was the gossip group. Hamilton took Lorraine into the study, and when Lorraine sat on the sofa, he walked to the bar alone. "What would you like to drink?" Lorraine thought for a while. "It's morning tea time. How about some black tea, whiskey or rum?" "Whiskey." On the rocks, the crystal glass fell in front of Lorraine with a clatter. The ice cubes shook slightly and fell half a grid, distorting the sunlight outside the window and casting an amber pattern resembling the North American continent on the coffee table. Lorraine raised his glass. "Where is Mr. President?" The 3-day trip to Boston was shortened to 1 day. He went to Concord overnight last night. If nothing unexpected happens, he is now speaking to the New Hampshire State Assembly. The schedule was adjusted so tightly all of a sudden. "Are you planning to rush back to New York on Independence Day?" "That's partly because of this, but the more important reason is that the originally planned tour of the central and northern parts was temporarily changed to a national tour. The president decided to set up a coinage committee as soon as possible. In other words, a revolving door. It will definitely be launched before 1790. I need your promise that whether it is 1988 or 1989, your share capital must be £1 million. Not the previously agreed 500,000. Lorraine took a sip of wine silently. "If it is 1988, it's okay, but not next year. It will affect the turnover of the Chamber of Commerce." Hamilton was overjoyed. "It's a deal." Lorraine shrugged. "The president's schedule is adjusted so tightly now. Can you still catch up?" "I've decided not to attend the cruise." Hamilton's response surprised Lorraine. "Yesterday, before leaving, the president received a special invitation. I'll be attending in his place, a month from now, the Sanctuary Hills auction." Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "You're aware of this?" Hamilton said, his expression masked by the motions of a drink. "This auction contains items America wants. Is it the design for the Fury?" Lorraine wondered inwardly, but didn't speak aloud. He ended the conversation in silence, and Hamilton wasn't surprised. "Your brother," Hamilton said, "is an excellent teacher." "I know." The meeting that day lasted a total of 62 minutes, and we talked for a full 57 minutes. "What was the result?" He asked Brigadier General Chris Emmons to bring him a cup of tea. Just when he got impatient, Lorraine stuck out his tongue. "What did he say in those 5 minutes?" "He said he likes order, and that America needs to continue to serve as England's source of raw materials and market for products during his term. The annual trade volume must be in deficit, and raw material exports must account for more than 60% of total exports, just like before we became independent. This is the order he wants. What if you refuse? He will transfer Colonel Horatio Nelson, who is under house arrest, from the Leeward Islands to rehabilitate him and, by the way, slightly increase the intensity of the fight against smuggling." Lorraine thought for a long time. "He probably won't transfer Colonel Nelson. Colonel Nelson lacks effective means to close off the sea on a large scale, and his title is not suitable for commanding a fleet. Ranks can be promoted. Even if the candidate isn't Nelson, it could be Armani or Collingwood, or anyone else. We know that as long as Admiral Drake is willing to support us, the Royal Navy has no shortage of excellent officers. Lorraine couldn't help but think of the thick stack of new employee resumes she had just received. After careful study, Carmen had initially identified 7 special officers with a potential to become admirals, 22 first-class officers with a potential to become captains, and 42 outstanding ground crew officers. As Hamilton had said, the Royal Navy had a surplus of talent, and what it lacked most was outstanding officers capable of standing on their own 2 feet. Lorraine couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for his American friend. "So, what are you going to do? Resign and start over?" Hamilton said seriously. "But before we are defeated a second time, we hope to at least have the strength to fight back." This statement implied that the United States was ready to launch a naval revitalization plan. Lorraine put down his glass and sat up straight. "Since you dare to hope to struggle in front of the Royal Navy, then Mr. Secretary Hamilton, what can the Drake Chamber of Commerce do for America?" On March 14, Secretary of the Navy Admiral Davis spoke at the Confederation Congress and proposed the Naval Revitalization Plan to take shape in 10 years and step into territorial waters in 20 years, Hamilton said. General Washington spoke later, further proposing a policy of building a more elite, faster, and modernized Navy. He proposed to Congress to phase out all 77 of the Navy's outdated ships over a 10-year period, while simultaneously building a world-class main fleet and 3 high-speed coastal defense fleets at a 5-year pace. The general hoped that in 20 years, America's new Navy, supported by coastal defenses, would be able to meet the challenge of any powerful nation, with a fearless fleet constantly protecting American merchants worldwide. To achieve this, the Navy must comprise at least 6-8 battleships, 20-24 auxiliary warships, and 50-60 auxiliary vessels. The Confederation Congress approved the proposals of General Washington and Secretary Davis and approved the first phase of a special military supply budget of £500,000. Lorraine listened attentively, his chin propped up. Hamilton's words conveyed that Americans were fully prepared to build a new Navy. With a unified thinking and funding in place, the so-called revitalization plan was no longer the whim of a single individual, department, or political group. It was now a viable possibility. But they weren't without hesitation, and the root of their hesitation lay in the choice of battleship. Lorraine knew the Americans wanted their battleships to be genuine Class III battleships. However, no nation or shipyard with shipbuilding capabilities, including the founding father of the United States, Louis V. and Drake Maritime Group, was willing to risk crossing British boundaries by providing technology or selling completed ships to the United States. Therefore, the Americans were so eager to design and build tribute ships for France and Britain, hoping to play the role of a naive scapegoat, gain some experience, and avoid any setbacks. Unfortunately, the situation was difficult to overcome. The Americans didn't seem to have given up completely, especially with the upcoming Sanctuary Hill auction, where Washington had invited Hamilton to attend, clearly signaling their determination to go all out in the bidding for the furious design. This was not good news for the Drake Chamber of Commerce. The key question was how to proceed. Lorraine crossed his legs and folded his palms on his knees. "I have a basic understanding of your country's budget. What remains is how your country plans to allocate this budget, as well as the construction period and other requirements." Hamilton pulled out a stack of reports from the desk. "While we were on the ship, your Chamber of Commerce developed 7 ship allocation plans for us within a 5-year period, ranging from the smallest of 220,000 to the largest of 720,000. They basically took into account all our needs and were both complete and sincere. Initially, we preferred Plan B, £360,000, 2 second-generation servant-class ships, 6 first-generation servant-class ships, 4 high-speed brigs, and 12 high-speed brigands, but plans cannot keep up with changes." He slammed the report down. "I said your brother is a good teacher. After taking this class, we understand that nothing can be accomplished overnight. The Navy's spearhead must be completed before the revolving door turns. We only have 2 years, and Plan C is the best solution at the moment, £350,000, including 2 Valkyrie-class high-speed frigates, 4 first-generation servant-class ships, 2 high-speed brigs and 6 high-speed brigands. We hope to deliver them by December 1787 at the latest." Lorraine spread his hands regretfully. "Although your country has probably considered a lot, I'm sorry, with the capabilities of the Maritime Group, It is impossible to complete the construction of 2 brand new Valkyrie-class ships within 18 months, but I heard that your shipyard happens to have a ready-made Valkyrie-class ship. No, one is a Valkyrie-class ship that has not yet been armored. But the designs of the two are very similar, right? Hamilton smiled harmlessly. Kenway, what should we do? The United States really can't afford a real Valkyrie. Can you take off the Valkyrie's armor, dress her up, and marry her? Chapter 565. A bad premonition. Hamilton laid out his plan, which was simple. The United States intended to acquire the second-class Valkyrie and Valkyrie-class ships from the Height shipyard. This raised the question of whether the presence of second-class ships was crucial to the operational structure of the direct fleet. The answer was ambiguous. Just analyzing the 2 first-class ships currently in service, Lorraine's Valkyrie and Pierce's Lady, they undoubtedly bore the brunt of the qualitative change in their respective organizations. Thanks to the Lady, the Special Operations Group of the smaller fleet was able to surpass the First Fleet, becoming the most independent and powerful combat unit in the direct fleet. Thanks to the Valkyrie, Lorraine was able to win the Battle of Bastille, dominating the Caribbean, becoming the White Banner pirate king feared throughout the pirate world. They were indispensable pillars of the direct fleet, both in terms of combat power and tactics. However, there was no true invincibility on the ocean. At the Battle of Bastille, the Valkyrie narrowly avoided being severely damaged by Blackbeard's broadside. Earlier, at the Gulf of Curiamuria, had Lorraine not arrived in time, the Lady and Pierce might have become Portuguese spoils. From this perspective, the plan to use the second ship as a standby ship to deal with the possibility of unplanned disability is of great significance, despite its high cost. However, the wording of this plan overlooks a crucial condition: the Drake Company must not lose control of both ships, regardless of the form of disability. If they were lost, the replacement ship would lose its vital heavy equipment. The Drake Maritime Group's Valkyrie class and its related Valkyrie class are undoubtedly the most advanced ship designs in human sailing history. They possessed the world's thickest hull, even without the patch armor, and possessed exceptional speed. Among the 50-meter-plus sailing vessels delivered today, the Valkyrie ranks second in speed, and the Lady ranks third. The only vessel to surpass them in speed is their predecessor, the Daobao. The Daobao's top speed is 16 knots, and to acquire the wings to fly, she sacrifices almost all offensive and defensive capabilities. However, as a pure-blooded warship, its design's ultimate value lies in its onboard firepower. Equipped with a 32-pound mortar and a 48-pound mortar, the Valkyrie can threaten any Tier 1 battleship under advantageous conditions, and can also defeat a Tier 3 battleship under evenly matched conditions. This is its value. However, without its heavy firepower, the Valkyrie reverts to the status of a frigate, at best a top-tier, high-speed frigate. The second-generation Servant, with its enhanced offensive and defensive capabilities, can also challenge frigates of higher tiers. While victory is far less straightforward than the Valkyrie, its cost is less than one-third of the Valkyrie's, and its sophisticated construction technology and extensive standardized components reduce its construction time to just 1 year. All things considered, the Valkyrie offers no real advantage. Therefore, the direct fleet didn't need high-speed frigates. Lorraine only needed the Valkyrie and the Dame, equipped with heavy firepower. Similarly, the 2 second-tier ships didn't hold much practical value for the Chamber of Commerce. Any reasonable person knew how unlikely it was for a warship to be disabled without being lost. And the possibility of a disabled ship without being lost, and then being unable to repair it or unable to do so in time, was as remote as a mirage. To be frank, the Chamber of Commerce's board of directors approved the construction of the 2 second-tier ships not because they had high hopes for them, but rather because they hoped that the continued success of large-scale ship orders at the Height shipyards Docks 1 and 5 would allow them to gain experience, improve their processes, and increase their efficiency in building large vessels. So, the fact that the Americans want to reap the benefits just when the 2 types of second ships are about to be completed is really a big help. Alexander, you have given me a difficult problem. Lorraine covered his chin, looking embarrassed. I have great expectations for the second Valkyrie-class ship that is about to be put into service and the second Valkyrie-class ship that is very likely to be put into service next year. Their joining will make the combat effectiveness of the direct fleet achieve a qualitative leap, but the United States wants to buy them. Hamilton put an apology on his face. Kenway, I know you are reluctant. But the revolving door will transform America. We thought the British would not notice these, but your brother is too outstanding. Even if we only have a short 1-hour contact, we know that he will not sit idly by and watch America take off. If Zheng Drake wants to destroy the U.S. economy, the 2 Valkyrie-class ships can't be the opponent of the North American fleet, Lorraine emphasized in a serious voice. We don't expect to defeat him, as long as he is afraid to act rashly. As long as the threat of backlash is big enough, Britain will not allow him to start a war. It seems that you are determined to get my baby. Lorraine sighed helplessly and relieved. Alexander, they are yours. Weighing the security of trade routes and the future of allies, I still think that a strong America can bring me more benefits. You will definitely not regret your decision today. Hamilton stood up, solemnly poured 2 glasses of new wine, and handed one of them to Lorraine. Lorraine, I have already drafted the military supply contract. Don't worry, my friend, I never regret my decisions. Lorraine smiled. There is one more thing you need to know before checking the contract. What? The Valkyrie class and Valkyrie class are derived from the same design. You already know that. Lorraine shook his wine glass. I can terminate the armor contract to reduce your procurement costs, but in order to adapt to the armor, the Valkyrie class has undergone a lot of detailed modifications. She is similar to the Valkyrie class only in appearance. They are different ships at heart. Of course, the cost is also higher. I don't know if you are mentally prepared. Hamilton had a bad premonition. Valkyrie class, how much does the Valkyrie class without armor cost? She is not a model for sale, so there is no public price. I calculated it according to the Chamber of Commerce's selling price formula. The price of a single Valkyrie class ship is £95,000, and the Valkyrie class, £110,000. This means that the budget for Plan C that Kren gave you is not enough, and you have to pay more. Everland's Natural Flower Shop on Wesley Street in the North District. Sigrid Christina Teresa, wearing a scalloped green petticoat, paused before a field of blooming lilies. Leaning forward to inhale the fragrance with rapt attention. A stern-faced young man paused beside her, a pot of red and a pot of white roses before him. He covered his mouth, lost in thought, looking undecided. Sig straightened up with a smile. Idiot Harry, only red roses can express the love in my heart. I guess you misunderstood something. Harry stroked the flower pot of white roses regretfully. You haven't heard from your parents for half a month. Ryan and I have even chosen a cemetery for you. Don't you feel that you have let us down by coming back like this? Naughty boy, shouldn't I choose my favorite lily when visiting the grave? I'm dead anyway. Instead of catering to your preferences, normal people would tend to have their own aesthetics, innocence, purity, respect, humility. Sig murmured with his back to Harry. I received your kindness. It sounds unexpectedly good. Veins popped out on Harry's handsome face. Thank God, white roses have become the 84th beautiful thing that makes me feel sick. You have to get used to it. Hearing Sig's sarcastic comfort, Harry spat coldly. The wanderer has returned home. How does it feel to be back home? The town is more prosperous than before, but it's a pity that there is a new mayor. He is an awkward brothercon and a stubborn person. There are not many people in the world who can make you feel sorry for them. Maybe it's because I don't get along with that surname. I don't like both brothers. Sig played with his ribbon quietly. You've been away for 2 weeks. What's new? Harry's expression suddenly became serious. During the time you were away, 100 demons paraded at night. So interesting. Just like disgusting garlic has the effect of warding off evil spirits. As soon as you left, all kinds of monsters gathered. Among them are 3 of the most famous monsters, Cotton Jack, Henry the Hound, and Bonnet, the Viking who almost killed Leif Erikson and Katharina Dibbo in Bastard, 2 pirate kings and 1 pirate king candidate? Do sharks smell blood? Our people took the risk to sneak into Nassau, but they didn't gain much. We don't know yet whether they came for the auction. We only know that Cotton Jack issued a skeleton call. Henry, Bonnet and the pirate Prince Bellamy were all summoned, but the Robin Hood of the Sea was absent. Sig's hand stopped unconsciously. Harry, I don't understand. Does Cotton Jack have such a strong appeal? Logically speaking, in the current pirate world, only Black Baron Pavlemy and Blackbeard Edward have the prestige to summon other pirate kings. Of course, our old friend has enough prestige, but the pirate kings are probably also very cautious. They probably dare not respond to the call of the white flag, so it is very likely that the person who really issued the call is someone else. Sig pondered. Who could it be? God knows. Harry shook his head. We don't even know the purpose of their gathering. I can guess the purpose. Sig laughed as if he was afraid of chaos in the world. I haven't told you yet. The new mayor's brother is coming to Boston for a visit soon, and I have agreed to be his tour guide. We will meet here on June 22nd. Harry's eyes widened. That brother, Sig confirmed. The pirates must be here for him, right? As tour guides, we must keep this news a secret. We can't let him be distracted by trivial matters. And we can't ruin this pleasant journey with our own hands. Got it. Harry was no stranger to Sign's disregard for the overall situation. He neither agreed nor disagreed, simply asking, "Are you going to prepare any gifts? Go find the invitation." Sig looked up at the sun. "It's rare to meet such a wealthy gentleman. This time, I must go to the world's top auction to broaden my horizons." Chapter 566, Sleight of Hand. Time flew by, and by June 22nd, everything was progressing smoothly. The Maritime Group and the United States had officially signed a contract for the procurement of military vessels. The contract closely mirrored the original Plan C, for a total of 14 ships, valued at £359,000 British pounds, tax-free. The ships included 2 frigates, one of the special, unarmored Valkyrie class, costing £110,000 British pounds, with delivery in April 1787, one standard Valkyrie class, costing £95,000 British pounds, with delivery in September 1786. 4 destroyers, modeled after the Drake I Servant, costing £28,000 British pounds each, with 1 ship to be delivered in 1786 and 3 in 1787. 8 frigates, including 2 Bermuda brigs, costing £9,000 British pounds each, with delivery in 1787, and 6 Bermuda brigs, costing £4,000 British pounds each, with 3 to be delivered in 1786 and 1787. The signing of this contract marked the official conclusion of Hamilton's first mission, entrusted to him by Washington. Sloop, the expressman from the Hutt shipyard, carrying the original and duplicate contracts, and Hamilton's messenger, caught up with Washington's team on their southward inspection tour in Rhode Island. The trip took a day and a night, and he also brought back the Navy Department's Special Commissioner, Vice Admiral Lingas, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the U.S. Navy. The Vice Admiral, unlike Hamilton, was a bureaucrat of very different stripes. After receiving the contract, his first request to Lorraine was to change the records for the 2nd Valkyrie class and 2nd Valkyrie class ships. The 2nd Valkyrie class ship was changed to the 1st original class high-speed frigate, officially named the USS United States. The 2nd Valkyrie class ship was changed to the 2nd original class high-speed frigate, officially named the USS Constitution. Following Lingas's request, the list of ship designers was also adjusted, with a group of 7 designers serving the U.S. Navy Department added. Their remaining work consisted of designing the bull figure, hull paint, and poop deck decorations, all tasks that did not affect flow and balance, and did not require entering the Hutt shipyard's dry dock. In fact, most of this work would not even be performed before delivery. An interesting episode also occurred during this period. Perhaps genuinely believing he had seized Lorraine's vital future combat power, Hamilton, who was in the process of handing over his duties, engaged in a heated argument with Vice Admiral Lingas. Hamilton accused Vice Admiral Lingas of, like a greedy bandit, using despicable means to seize the contributions of the Maritime Group design team to America. Vice Admiral Lingas offered no excuses for his actions. Finally, Hyde, unable to bear it any longer, secretly explained to Hamilton that adjusting the ship's model, rating, and even the design team is a common tactic used by countries when purchasing capital ships from private shipyards. Take, for example, the Valkyrie class. The Valkyrie had been delivered for 2 years and had experienced a Battle of Kiriamuria Gulf, the invasion of Muscat, and the Battle of Basse-Terre. Although its specific configuration had not been made public, its battlefield capabilities had long been thoroughly analyzed by various major powers. However, even with the same design, the Grand Dame's battlefield capabilities and positioning were completely different from those of the Valkyrie. Lingas's subtle trick was able to obscure the design of America's first-generation capital ship, masking the design differences between the United States and the Constitution. These off-battlefield advantages were undoubtedly a cost-effective coup for the still weak U.S. Navy. Lorraine remained non-committal about Hayter's explanation. While Hayter's explanation was indeed a common practice in the shipbuilding industry, applying it to the Maritime Group's battle cruisers was undoubtedly redundant. The biggest difference between the America class and the already renowned Valkyrie and Dame was their firepower. A 32-pounder main gun versus an 18-pounder, a 24-pounder secondary gun versus a 12-pounder, and a 48-pounder bow assault gun versus a 12-pounder. While that was standard equipment for the class's external sea trials, Lorraine wasn't at all worried that America's future enemies would mistake the Constitution for an unarmored Valkyrie. Instead, he was more concerned that the Americans themselves would mistake the Constitution for an unarmored Valkyrie and then charge arrogantly against the Tyre II battleships. If such a scene were to truly unfold, old iron shell, sorry. On a personal note, Karen's love life continued to take its usual long detours. The Nordic need for distance, in certain situations, is an incurable trait destined for loneliness. Lorraine and her partner had already grown close that day during their business meeting, but as they parted ways, Miss Solomon, like any competent host, mustered the courage to take a step forward toward Karen. Karen, like any competent Nordic person, took a small step back, and even looked a little disgusted. Thus, this small step became the tea-time dessert that the Haidt mansion couldn't finish for days. On his path to becoming the third married member of the team, Karen had, through his own actions, successfully embarked on the most winding mountain road. It was tea time. The English breakfast was as rich and greasy as ever. Lorraine slowly cut his baked potato when he suddenly looked up. "Hannah, how about that shop called Evelyn's Natural Scent? It looks like an ordinary flower shop that we casually agreed to meet." Hannah wiped her mouth. "Only one woman has impressed me in the past few days. She appeared twice, and John Leshy didn't appear once. Isn't it a stronghold?" Lorraine put the potato into her mouth, chewed it carefully, and swallowed it slowly. "What's special about that woman?" "The figure and facial contours are exactly the same as John Lesh's. The habitual movements and ways of exposing vital points are also similar." Hannah thought for a while. "Unless it is a deliberate imitation over the years, it should be the same person." Lorraine almost choked to death. "You mean, John Leshy disguised himself as a woman and lurked in Boston?" "It's not necessarily a disguise." Hannah shook her head. "She has very good lady etiquette. When wearing a petticoat and a dress, many movements are not easy to imitate with male muscles, so she didn't disguise herself as a woman and lurked in Boston, but disguised herself as a man and lurked in the British Army, perhaps." Hannah lifted her teacup. "She might have received similar training to the assassins. Those movements are just hard to imitate, not impossible." Lorraine couldn't help but roll her eyes, recalling Rashid's figure, voice, and several displays of cooperation, and waved her hands repeatedly. Compared to a British lieutenant colonel disguised as a man, it's even less likely that Rashid has special skills. "Remember that rock climbing?" Her grip on the rope was inefficient. If it weren't for her adjutant's help, she would have nearly fallen at least twice. "Then she must be a woman," Hannah concluded decisively. "Woman?" Lorraine smiled playfully. "Carmen, do you remember the resume of Lieutenant Colonel Lishad, John Lishad, a native of Hereford, Wales, 26 years old? 3 generations ago, he was awarded the title of Lord Bath for his merits, but by his generation, his family had fallen into poverty. At the age of 14, his parents died in a mountain bandit raid while visiting a friend. John Lishad became the only heir of the family, and on the 7th day after the inheritance, he sold all his property and went to the casino with joy. Incidentally, his neighbor's deepest impression of him was gambling. Although he was still young at the time, there is no doubt that he was a gambler. Time has passed, and it is impossible to verify the outcome of his gambling, but he probably won. On the 3rd day after the gambling, he spent a huge amount of money to donate the rank of 2nd Lieutenant of the 52nd Boston Regiment, and set off for Boston to take up his post on the immigrant ship Catgut. This trip transformed him. John Leshad gained attention for his wisdom and luck. In just 1 year, his 8th company replaced 4 company commanders, and he was promoted all the way from 2nd lieutenant to a higher position, becoming the 5th commander of the year. In addition, there were no rumors of gambling against Leshad in Boston. Instead, there were rumors of misconduct. He was a top playboy, and countless ladies from noble families were jealous of him. It was rumored that some even fought in social circles. Of course, the rumors about his pursuit of beauty can no longer be confirmed. The social circles he came into contact with dispersed with the migration of Boston's independence. Even if a few could be traced, our salesman would not have the opportunity to come into contact with those ladies from noble families. Then, he participated in the War of Independence. The 8th Company under his command was good at fighting. There are at least 10 verifiable merits, including the Bunker Hill raid on the U.S. military headquarters and the Halloween operation to penetrate Martinique, but there is no record of any commendation. At the end of 1779, The 52nd Regiment was transferred to India, and the 8th Company was disbanded for desertion. We retrieved the files from that disbandment and found no punishment, no trial, no discharge. Leshid and his 8th Company simply vanished, only to reappear 7 years later, having joined the Royal Secret Service and even risen to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Carmen sipped her tea with a sip of her tea. That's all we know. We've been investigating him intermittently for 7 years since Halloween, and aside from knowing he wasn't John Leshid himself, we know nothing else. He's like a ghost. Before they knew it, no one else was eating at the table. Only Hannah diligently prepared her tea, seemingly unmoved. Karen spoke for everyone, speaking with a sigh. This guy, couldn't he be the illegitimate son of George III? Hasn't Hannah confirmed it? It's her, not him. Even if she's related to His Majesty George III, she's a lost princess of Great Britain, definitely not a prince. Lorraine picked up the teaspoon and clinked the teacup. Okay, guys. We knew that Leshid was a dangerous and interesting guy, otherwise we wouldn't have started investigating her background after the Halloween operation. Even though the investigation didn't yield any results, this is the second time we've dealt with her, and fortunately, we're still companions. We have to trust our companions, and believe that in the face of common goals, we are at least safer than her enemies. Let's proceed according to the original plan this afternoon. Catalina will accompany me to meet Leshid, and the rest of you will take your positions and dig out as many of her men hidden in the town as possible. Dancing with venomous snakes is fun. Lorraine raised her teacup in a pompous tone. Just one thing, I wish you all a good time. PS1, the original Class Number 1 ship, USS United States, and Number 2 ship, USS Constitution, both came from the famous Naval Act of 1794. As the name suggests, the construction began in 1794 and was delivered in 1797. The manufacturer was the Haight Shipyard. The original class in this article has replaced the Valkyrie's hull design. Due to shack spurring, the USS America entered service 11 years earlier than our timeline, and the USS Constitution 9 to 10 years earlier. P.S. The Order of the Bath was established by King George I on May 18, 1725, and has a corresponding Order of the Bath. Before 1815, this order had only one rank, the Knight of the Bath, often referred to as the Knight of the Bath in British biographies. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567, Connection. Part 1. Wesley Street runs from bottom to top. One end connects the vibrant, low-lying new industrial South District, and the other connects to the wealthy, Old Town North District, surrounded by 3 hills. The cobblestone-paved Wesley Street connects the two, rising from low to high, like a journey from the present to the past. The street is bustling. Ascending the steps, both sides are lined with brightly colored, densely packed wooden houses, 2 or 3 stories high, with no spaces between them, one next to the other, one connected to the other. Their structures are mostly similar. The ground floor houses shops, the second floor is for living, and if there are 3 floors, it's to accommodate a large number of people. The types of businesses are also quite dull, numerous taverns, many bakeries, the occasional hotel and grocery store in between, and the occasional gambling den and prostitutes wedged in the gaps. Their financial backers are the impoverished and numerous working people of the South District. For those who toiled for barely a penny a day, art, music, beauty, and space were meaningless. The only characteristic of their pursuit was that they had to be able to afford them. Customer demand had created a monstrous lower street, becoming increasingly grimy as they approached the south side, with shelves stacked outside every storefront. A pristine 4-car avenue is reduced to a 2-car lane. Carriages refused to pass through Wesley Street, and the drivers, driven by the narrow lanes, could not help but feel a sense of dread at being consumed. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a carriage stopped at the intersection of Lower Wesley Street. A tall, handsome gentleman stepped out, dressed in a tuxedo and a top hat, the silver gleam of his wig peeking through the brim. He clutched a long, closed black umbrella, a gesture he took for granted even in the blazing sun. Fashions imbued with British influences were once ubiquitous in Boston, but now they are rare. Ever since the exodus of the upper class from America, British style has become glaring here, avoided wherever possible. But this gentleman was clearly special. He paid no heed to the hostility surrounding him. He circled the car, umbrella in hand, and leisurely opened the door. A slender leg emerged from the car, its shiny pointed shoes tapping on the steps, its trouser legs bulging into a round curve. Then came a hand, delicate fingertips painted bright red, softly resting on the gentleman's welcoming palm. A woman stepped out, wearing a swallowtail and breeches, a regal knight's sword at her waist. Her long, fiery red hair was tied in a ponytail, atop a top hat that was considerably shorter than the gentleman's. Though dressed in pure male attire, no one would mistake her for a man. Her curves betrayed the pride of her womanhood, her narrow, long eyes drifting, and the way she glanced sideways could captivate anyone. There was a click. Catalina's leather shoes clattered against the uneven stone pavement, and she lost her balance. A sigh escaped her rosy lips, and she was about to fall. Lorraine immediately exerted force with his palm, grabbed Catalina's hand and lifted it up. The umbrella that was leaning on the ground was also turned sideways at some point, supporting her waist just right and helping her find her balance again. Catalina stood up depressedly. I can't even stand steadily. Can high heels really highlight my temperament? Lorraine smiled and let go of her hand. In theory, standing on tiptoe can make the waist and back more upright. Not only can it lengthen the legs, but it can also force people to lift their chests and hips. Judging from the effect, Carmen is not aimless, but standing unsteadily will only force people to hunch over. Right, women's sense of balance is much better than men's. Since men can duel in high heels, there is no reason for women to be unable to stand steadily. That's right. Catalina reached out and took Lorraine's arm. Captain, how far do we have to show off like this? Evelyn's natural breath is at the end of Wesley Upper Street, near the Lower Street. It's about 500 meters away from here. Lorraine recalled Hannah's description. Actually, I hope this road can be longer. The longer we show off, the more likely we are to be exposed to the eyes on both sides of the road. In that case, wouldn't it be better to walk slower? Lorraine glanced curiously at Katharina's high heels. No need to be so deliberate, really. There's an old phrase in this world called division of labor and cooperation. It might seem like a recipe for mutual gain, but it actually describes the essence of society. Cooperation presupposes division of labor. Division of labor allows people to clearly define their roles and responsibilities, allowing them to focus their energy on specific tasks, creating value for everyone while enjoying the fruits of others' labor with peace of mind. It's precisely for this reason that division of labor is so great. It breaks the inherent loneliness of higher organisms, while simultaneously integrating and accommodating the inherent selfishness of intelligence, making it an addictive and irresistible force. The only question is, who's in charge? Carmen said to Hannah, twirling her wine glass from behind a third-floor hotel window. Their room had a perfect view, for they lay directly beneath the dividing line between Lower and Upper Wesley Streets. The dividing line was the first side alley running from the street up. Here, the houses stretched out in a straight line, separated by a gap of more than 4 meters. The lower side was piled with bottles and wooden crates, while the upper side gleamed with white hedges and lawns. Hannah, gazing at the crowds in the alley through the curtain, turned and met Carmen's expectant gaze. Are you waiting for a question? Hannah asked curiously. Isn't that normal? Carmen said angrily, although I don't intend to be mysterious. But why does Lorraine want to pull Rizid's braids? Do you really understand the calculation here? I don't understand. Hannah looked back at the street view and said as a matter of course. Lorraine said to find out Rizid's minions, then find them. No need for a reason. Carmen opened her mouth in confusion. So you are a boring woman. In the eyes of most people, women who like to get to the bottom of things are even more boring. Getting to the bottom of things requires relentless questioning, and I rarely ask questions, so I'm sorry. This is called telepathy. That red-haired woman is so hot. She's wearing men's clothes. Is she the secretary of that master? Damn rich pig. It must be very comfortable to lie on her. A cup of latte and 2 puffs. Ho ha ho 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 ha ho ha. A grubby group of children ran noisily past a window, catching Hannah's eye. She spotted Catalina and Lorraine walking arm in arm, crossing the alleyway and entering the upper street from the lower street. The beautiful couple attracted considerable attention, but despite the many people following them, few were behaving strangely. Hannah's brow furrowed slightly, and she whispered, anything worth noting? Katerina sure looks dashing in men's clothing. Carmen yawned, leaning against the window. I've only seen her once in Miami, when she was about to go on a date with Valrhona. Hannah disliked Carmen's subtle way of saying things. She could have simply said, I didn't notice, But she had to add, I don't mind Catalina and Lorraine being together. Is exclusivity really that important? Henna grinned, a hint of derision. Suddenly, a reflection of a wine bottle flashed before her eyes. Her pupils shrank. Beyond the window, all she could see was the heavy curtains. Xavier, who are our neighbors? Carmen thought for a while. Lucas Winery, a 3-story building built in 1753. The landlord is an Irish pioneer and has channels for Scotch whiskey. The 3rd floor, Henna pointed straight ahead through the curtains, is the 3rd floor the landlord's family, or a guest, who knows? The time for collecting intelligence is very limited. We only know that he has not rented it out. I'll go and take a look. Henna pulled up her hood and opened the door. Do you want to call 2 sailors in? You can't even hold a dagger properly. A thief can take your life. No thanks. Carmen raised her head proudly. Let them continue to guard outside the door. A lady's lazy afternoon is not something that everyone can watch. A statement is added at the end of the chapter. The next chapter is not a duplicate. Although it looks very similar in the preview part, it is definitely not a duplicate. Over. Chapter 568, Connection. Part 2. Wesley Street runs from top to bottom. One end connects the historic North District, surrounded by 3 hills and home to the wealthy, while the other connects to the vibrant, low-lying, new industrial South District. The cobblestone Wesley Street connects the two, descending from high to low, like a descent from heaven to earth. The street is bustling. Descending the steps, both sides are lined with elegant 3- or 4-story buildings, with wide gaps between them, where flower beds line the buildings, beautifying the spider-web-like alleys. The structures of the houses are mostly similar. Shops are located on the ground floor, and living quarters are located above. While it's impossible to accommodate many people, the necessary guest rooms are essential for overnight stays. The variety of establishments is also quite dull. Numerous restaurants, numerous cafes, the occasional hotel and seasonal fruit and vegetable shop, and the occasional heartwarming flower shop and bookstore. They serve only the wealthy of the North District. For those gifted individuals born without a knowledge of money, art, music, beauty, and space are all essential daily pursuits, with practicality taking a backseat. After all, the distinction between rich and cheap is external, and the pursuits should be external as well. Customer demand has created a monstrous upper street, which becomes increasingly spacious as it approaches the north end, with flower beds and parasols dominating every storefront. A 4-car avenue has been squeezed into a 2-car lane. Carriages are reluctant to pass through Wesley Street, and when they navigate the narrow lanes, drivers can't help but feel the dread of being sued. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Sig knocked on the door of the tavern at the entrance to Upper Wesley Street, 3 light knocks and 1 heavy knock, unhurriedly. She was quickly ushered into the house, holding a small bag and standing prettily before a bald, large man. Lieutenant Colonel. The bald man's expression was both respectful and surprised. I remember the major said you had an appointment today, I think, at 2 o'clock. Yes, then why are you here? Because that's where I'm supposed to be. Sig walked in, put down his bag, and sat down on a stool at the bar. Dating is a battle between men and women, Borg. Especially when the person you're dating doesn't know how to be punctual. No matter how late he is, I have to be 15 minutes late, Mr. Drake is late, Borg suddenly realized. Lieutenant Colonel, are you here to be so pretentious because you didn't get what you wanted? Sig was silent. She looked at Borg's honest face with confusion, struggling to come up with a simple explanation. But could such an explanation really exist? Sig was skeptical. She sighed helplessly. Borg, how many years have we been working for the Royal Secret Service? Ever since the last intelligence station was busted. Officially 7 years. 7 years, and you're a lieutenant now. Thanks to your trust, I was promoted to lieutenant when I took over the tavern last year. My younger brother also went to church school. My parents were so happy in their letters. It has nothing to do with my trust. Sig smiled and waved his hand. Lane said you were a bartender back home and that you'd be perfect for this position. But until he brought you to me, I thought your name was Hawk. Huh? I'm the commander. Remembering your faces is hard enough, especially since you often dress up in fancy clothes for meetings, using lead powder that costs more than the intelligence. Borg lowered his head shyly. He had only been to Evelyn's natural-scented routine meeting once. To live up to Major Lane's admonition to disguise yourself completely, he used public funds to dress himself up as a French gentleman. It was the most extravagant outfit he'd ever worn, so he remembered it clearly. Powder wasn't even the most expensive expense. He still devotedly worshipped that golden wig. Lieutenant Colonel, it must have been very hard, wasn't it? Borg was both moved and ashamed. Lieutenant Colonel, I'm sorry, don't apologize, Borg. Sig jumped off his chair, tiptoed, and patted Borg's shoulder. You're so honest. You might die in this line of work any day. That's why you need to smile more. Don't force yourself to guess at things you don't understand, it's exhausting. Recently, a new term has emerged, democracy and republic. While it seems to respect human freedom, it actually shackles it. Success is achieved through profit-seeking democracy. Human nature is profit-seeking, the pursuit of wealth, power, and security. Profitability is the overarching premise. Without profit, everything else is nonsense. This is precisely why the Republic is so great. It clothes selfishness in a sanctified veneer, allowing anyone to proudly profess their desires, while also legitimately advocating the greatness of sacrifice in the pursuit of profit. The only question is, who'll sacrifice? Harry said calmly to Ryan from his room on the third floor of the Lucas Winery, gazing out at the street. Their room had a perfect view, for beneath their feet lay the dividing line between Upper and Lower Wesley Streets. The dividing line was the last alleyway running from top to bottom, where the houses separated by a gap of more than 4 meters stretched straight out. The Upper Street side was decorated with clean white hedges, while the Lower Street side was filled with filthy garbage. Ryan shook the bottle and burped comfortably. Is it an illusion? In the past 2 years, you have become more and more fond of guessing the Lieutenant Colonel's thoughts, because nonsense also needs to be reasonable, Harry said coldly, mobilizing a quarter of the manpower and strictly prohibiting any form of communication outdoors. Although it can be interpreted as an exercise in the transmission of important intelligence, I still need to convince myself, Ryan chuckled. Is that so? We have been partners all along, but the Lieutenant Colonel actually thinks that little Drake will find a way to dig us out of the ground. On this point, I support the Lieutenant Colonel's judgment. Ryan's hand froze in midair. What? Is there something hidden in this operation? The Lieutenant Colonel plans to conceal the whereabouts of those 3 pirates, right? Harry looked back at Ryan. Don't think too highly of some people. At the dock in Le François, little Drake first dismantled the coastal artillery, and then sent a ship to pick us up. The bloody night in Le François was the second most stressful memory in Ryan's life. The most stressful was the confrontation with Pierce in the water tank of the Haight shipyard, but it didn't matter, because no matter which time, he was convinced that he was dead. You're saying that if faced with risk, little Drake would sell us out without hesitation. That's inevitable. Just as the Lieutenant Colonel didn't want to be involved in little Drake's conflict with the pirates, little Drake didn't want to risk his life for England. But the root of today's confrontation lies elsewhere, not there. They're vying for control, Harry said. Right now, we hold the reins. We're in the dark, little Drake in the open. We'll tell him there's no risk in the auction, and whether this information is true or false, he won't believe it completely. He needs someone to be with him, to share the risk of the shipwreck. That requires a majority of us. That means we have to do our utmost to gather intelligence, uncover every possible danger, and help him prepare thoroughly. Because we believe if he's caught, we'll be exposed. Having a lieutenant colonel is bad enough, and we have to deal with another jerk all this time. Ryan waved his bottle in frustration, accidentally ruffling the curtains in front of them. Their hearts suddenly rose, and their conversation stopped in an instant. Waiting for the curtains to fall was surprisingly long. That red-haired woman is so hot. She's wearing men's clothes. Is she the master's secretary? Damn rich pig. It must be so comfortable to lie on her. A latte, 2 puffs. Ho ha ho ha ha ho ha. A group of dirty children ran noisily past the window, catching Harry's eye. He just happened to see Catalina holding Lorraine's arm as they walked through the streets and alleys, from the lower street to the upper street. The fluttering of the curtains had mostly subsided. Harry took a breath, his eyes following Lorraine's steps, examining everyone on the street. No suspicious people. If he wanted to dig us out, he should have planted a lot of people on the street. Maybe they're all concentrated in the flower shop. Ryan wandered over to Harry, set up the awning, and looked into the distance. This observation position is truly perfect. Not only can we control most of the street, but we can also use the poor people of the south side as cover. Could little Drake have imagined that? Our people didn't even hide, just swaggering in among the crowd. Don't underestimate the enemy. Harry was speaking when there was a sudden knock on the closed door. Major, the report has arrived. Ryan strode open the door and reached out to accept a scribbled wine list. 2 people attended the party. Lorraine Drake, male, wearing a suit, tall hat, and long umbrella. No weapons were seen. Katharina DeBow, female, red hair, wearing men's clothes, a short hat, and carrying a long sword. There was nothing unusual within 30 meters, and there were no guards. He handed the wine list to Harry with a shaking hand. Very good intelligence. The description is clear and concise. Although we have all seen it, we can't see it every time. Harry quickly copied the intelligence onto a piece of pure white letter paper, folded it and put it away, stood up and took off his windbreaker and top hat. I'll run over. You continue to watch the street. Ryan raised the bottle of wine. Do you know where to find the lieutenant colonel? In front of the fountain in the municipal garden before 2 o'clock, and in Borg's tavern after 2 o'clock. Harry lowered his head and put on his hat. It's 2:16 now, probably. Borg is wondering why the lieutenant colonel went to his place. Chapter 569, Connection. Dragnet. If the gradual transition from the north side to the south side resembles a long street like Wesley Street, then the south side's transition to the north side is undoubtedly the emerging working-class communities on the fringes. The south side's working-class communities have only been around for less than a decade. When Boston gained independence, capitalists, eager to stimulate the slaves' initiative, tried many methods but were hesitant to take the lead and become public enemies of civilization. This led them to develop an abolitionist movement that didn't abolish slavery. The working-class communities were a crucial part of this process. Through single-family houses, simple chapels, and cramped community parks, the capitalists created a sense of home for the workers. This was perhaps the most genuine kindness in the world, and the workers readily accepted and adapted. The freedom here differed from that of the harbor. If the front bay represented prosperity and the back bay unrestrained freedom, this area was home to a series of closed yet cohesive subcultures. Various civilizations took root and sprouted here, their delicate bodies vying for nutrients for growth. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, in the South 12 Kingren community, Wang Yi walked into the chapel-turned ancestral hall with his hands in his pockets. He was stopped a few steps later by a young man holding a cup of tea. But even though he was stopped, the young man's face showed undisguised surprise. Brother Yi, you're back, you're back. Yes, I'm back. Wang Yi smiled and rubbed the young man's head. Tuanzhe, is Master Liu here? Yes. Yes. Grandpa has been waiting in the house after breakfast. It turns out that he knew Brother Yi was coming. I kept Master Liu waiting for a long time. That's the problem. Grandpa always has breakfast wherever he is. Wang Yi laughed. Tuanzhe, do you want to make extra money? Drake, of course. Then I'll tell Master Liu. You left so quickly and you're smart. You will definitely do a good job. 130, Nansen Indian Community. Khal Drogo sat cross-legged amidst a column of stone pillars, facing 3 Indians wearing feather crowns and painted with oil paint. The 2 on his left and right wore respectful expressions, bowing their heads, waiting for the elder in the middle to speak. This standoff had been going on for a long time, and as the time for the meeting drew near, Khal's heart grew increasingly restless. Shaman, they're all waiting for your reply. The shaman shook his head tiredly. You are wrong, young oldman. The children listen to me because they want to hear the teachings of the Great Spirit. The children support me because they want to get the blessing of the Great Spirit. They have suffered a lot, and that suffering was inflicted by the white people. The Great Spirit told me that there is no need to help the white people, but you should not hear it. After all, the mosquito people have forgotten the Great Spirit for a long time. In other words, you refused. Ko stood up with drooping eyelids. Since the South 3rd District refused, I will go to the South 5th District. Boston is a white world, and there will always be someone who is interested in £100. Wait, the shaman's eyes suddenly widened. Oldman, the Great Spirit wants you to say what you just said again, what you said just now. Ko smiled like a villain. Does your Great Spirit like pounds? Only children need pounds. The shaman cleared his throat. The Great Spirit only needs faith. Who cares? The mosquito believe in God. Ka sat down again. £100 for 20 smart men for 3 days. I don't want any news to leak out, so those less smart ones left in the South Ward must learn to keep their mouths shut. The Great Spirit said that Indians and white men have nothing to say to each other. What a considerate Great Spirit, Ka sighed. Did he say anything else? The shaman crossed his legs and bowed his head. The Great Spirit said that money must be paid first. 155, South 7th Ward. South 7th Ward was the neighborhood directly across from Wesley Street. Because of the once famous Mary Day Chapel, it was located here, and its reputation was quite renowned among the neighborhoods. However, great fame always came at a price. The slave rebellion destroyed the then fledgling slave culture of the 7th Ward, and the area became a no-man's land. Bankrupt whites, pro-white blacks, Qing dynasty expelled by patriarchal rule, Indians who didn't believe in the Great Spirit. Here, rebels of all colors lived in isolation, wary of each other. Perhaps the only ones who could ignore cultural differences and open their hearts to the world around them were the children born here. Right now, the children of District 7 were gathered in the community park, surrounding three petite and shy women, Noah, Sharon, and Fafner. No one knew how these three women, who couldn't even speak a coherent sentence in front of strangers, managed to keep so many children together, but they certainly did it well. At least when Belle rushed into the park, all he saw were smiling boys and girls. Noah, Belle waved to Noah from outside the circle of children. That's enough, Noah pursed her lips and nodded, then pointed out a few children who looked particularly tall and strong. You are the leaders of the children, right? The four children exchanged hesitant glances and nodded in unison. So, did you remember everything I just said? Take your friends and run to Wesley Street, run a long lap, shout out any whispers you overhear, be careful not to fall, and don't fall behind. The children chattered in a chaotic manner, not only in front of Noah, but also beside Sharon and Fafner. All the voices blended together, creating a bustling atmosphere like a wild duck hunting ground. Will there be white bread? Will there be candy? Can we have cake? We can only play pranks in the lower streets. People on the streets are mean and don't like dirty kids. You'll get punished. The noise grew louder and louder, and just as the situation was about to get out of control, Belle rushed in, grabbed the tallest child by the back of the collar, and lifted him up with one hand. Listen to your sisters, he said, his teeth baring. Okay, the world suddenly fell silent. Noah clutched his chest and took a deep breath. He had the accompanying sailors bring out several large boxes and open them in front of the children. White bread, overflowing candies, and a sweet aroma drifted in the air. Just run to the side alley. Turn back when you get there. Be careful not to fall, and be careful not to get caught by the carriages, she said softly. There's plenty of bread and candies, but no cakes, they'll get crushed. Before she finished speaking, Belle loosened the child's collar and said, Let's run. I heard there aren't enough candies to go around. Let's go, let's play pranks, let's go play. 20 or 30 of Wu Huanhun's children ran away like the wind. Noah and Fafner collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Little Sharon ran over with a red face and bowed deeply to Belle. Thank you, Mr. Judea, you're welcome. Belle smiled and stuffed a handful of candy into his pocket. They're just good, obedient little ones, a little scared, a little tricked. Noah looked worriedly at the direction the children ran. But it's just Lower Street, is that okay? People who spend a lot of time at sea leave many traces, and they don't fit in with people on land. Such habits can only be concealed through cultivation and education. Belle peeled a candy and put it in his mouth. On Upper Street, there's Flyman and that group of reliable academy graduates. Compared to the limited number of pedestrians over there, there's enough to keep an eye on the flower shop. The key is Lower Street. There are so many people and the streets are so chaotic. Even the autistic Qing people and Indians wouldn't be noticeable there. But that makes it convenient for us. God is fair after all. At this point, he suddenly noticed Fafner's expression. It was different from Noah's worry. Rather than apprehension, it was more confusion. You. Hanji, right. Fafner jumped up with a bang, her body stiff and her face flushed. Yes. Fafner. Hanji. Second Navigation Officer. Tactical, Chief of the Tactical Room. Belle scratched his hair helplessly. Hanji, even if we don't deal with each other much on the ship, you are nominally my direct subordinate. Don't be nervous. Why? Yes, sir, it seems there's no hope. Hanji, do you have any ideas about this operation? No. No. No need. No need? The wording was very strange. Belle thought about it for a while, and suddenly an idea came to him. I know, you are worried that we are doing something unnecessary. After her secret was revealed, Fafner became more and more uneasy. Yes, sir, this is just an ordinary meeting. I think the other party just needs to wait there. No need. They won't arrange any manpower at all, never use human thinking to guess other species, such as Lorraine and that Leshad. Belle stretched and peeled the second candy. What you think is an ordinary meeting will determine the dominance of this cooperation in their eyes, and the victory or defeat is hidden in every inconspicuous detail, so they will definitely go all out. If you don't want to become a pawn, you can only go all out. Chapter 570, Connection. Blood Connection. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Wesley went down the street. Sawdust rye bread? Burnt clay rye bread? Or grass rye bread? A gentleman in a tuxedo was choosing his dinner in front of the bakery. His tuxedo was old, but clean. The noticeable areas were patched with subtle color differences, while the less noticeable areas were left casually decorated. But at least the tuxedo was complete: tailcoat, waistcoat, breeches, shirt. The toes of his leather boots were punctured, and the ribbon of his top hat was only half broken. Such people were not uncommon in Boston, and indeed throughout the United States. They were also young people who came to the New World with great ambition, but ultimately succumbed to reality. They succumbed to the present while clinging to the dignity and dreams of the past. In short, they were just ordinary. A carriage stopped at the corner, and a well-dressed gentleman jumped out, leaning on a long umbrella. He was tall and strong. He took a beautiful red-haired woman from the carriage. The two of them snuggled together, passed by the gentleman intimately, and walked down the long street, gradually disappearing. Like any competent man, the gentleman watched the beauty walk away, only lowering his head when the curves in his eyes were no longer distinct. Men suited to women's clothing, women born for men's clothing. This world is truly strange. He quickly wrote down tonight's dinner on the buffet menu, then took a saw from the shelf and expertly cut off a small piece of sawdust bread. He took it in his hand and slowly walked over to the scales at the counter. 70 grams of bread, 1 penny, thank you. The slovenly store manager took the money and pushed the buffet menu and bread together to the waiter. The waiter expertly wrapped it in a paper bag, handed it over, dropped the money into the cash box, and pocketed the buffet menu. Manager, I need to go take a shit, the waiter said. Don't go to old Gert's back door. His wife stepped in shit yesterday and blocked the door, cursing all night. Understood. Let's go to the side door today. The languid waiter exited the back door, skirted 2 neighbors, and reached Old Gert's tavern, where the manager was at odds. He glanced around, then whistled and squeezed into the dark alley where the side door led. The so-called dark alley, of course, was the dead-end alley. Outsiders rarely knew that there were actually alleys between the houses on the lower streets. However, for those shops that relied on traffic, the width of the storefront dictated how many people they could accommodate at once. Therefore, the alleys were artificially enclosed, becoming part of the storefront on the street side. The dark alley was dirty and messy. Old Gert's tavern specialized in low-quality watered-down alcohol. The other end of the side door led directly to the tavern's main hall. At night, this place was as bustling as the street. During the day, it was filled with dead bodies and the occasional corpse. The waiter walked over the scattered flesh without paying attention, choosing a good spot and thoroughly moistening the soil. After finishing his duties inside, he pulled out today's self-service order from his pocket and went to work outside. Standing up, he discovered there was still a slip in his other pocket. Tisk, let's go home. He discarded the slip in disgust and whistled again. The whistle rang out from the alley, and among the scattered bodies on the ground, one body stirred. The drunk reached out and groped for the ground, narrowly catching the waiter's hand a few times, only to luckily avoid it. Time and again, he finally found a comfortable spot for leverage. Snap! A powerful slap slammed down on the alley's gritty ground. With a grab of his 5 fingers and a push of his arm, he propped the drunk up, leaning against the wall. He burped limply, glancing doubtfully at the slip he had grabbed as he stood up. Lucky, he laughed. I still have some wine from last night, and the order hasn't been lost yet. Lucky, hiccup. Home, the drunk shoved the slip into his pocket and staggered out of the alley, turning 3 corners and 2 turns before entering the fence of a wooden house away from the main street. A young man in a waiter's uniform came up to him and held him up. Uncle Ralph. Damn it, you're drinking again, little Let. Ha 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 ha. Little Let has to go to work again, to earn money for Uncle's drinks, to earn money for Uncle's drinks. He was dancing around drunkenly, and a crumpled note flew out of his pocket, hitting Let on the forehead with a thud, and fell into Let's arms. Let angrily pushed the drunk to the ground, unfolded the note and took a look. You actually brought back a drink list. We can hardly afford bread at home, we have wine, haha. Bread is not important, bread is not important, wine is not important. Little Let took out a lighter from his uniform, lit the note in front of the drunk, and threw it to the ground. The drunk screamed and rushed over, stuffing the note into his mouth like crazy with the flames, chewing it. The fire's out, burp, out, time to drink again, may God drown you in wine. I'm off to work. Leaving his uncle, who could never be redeemed, Lair hurried out of the house, following the empty streets forward and upward. He soon reached a side alley, crossed Wesley Street along it, turned onto Upper Street, and entered through the back door of Lundy's Cafe, whose selling point was appreciate the various forms of poverty and experience the happiness of life. Manager, I'm on duty, Le announced. Little Le, the kind-faced manager poked his head out. Outside, table 3, take your order, I'll be right there. Le trotted out the door and headed straight for table 3, which bordered the side alley. A solitary middle-aged painter sat at table, absorbed in sketching across the alley. Le stole a glance and saw that the painting was unfinished, but the corner of the canvas already had a title, Loneliness. The painter, perceptive enough to notice the gaze, asked, young man, would you like to learn to paint? No, sir. Le pulled out his order. What would you like to drink? A latte, 2 eclairs. A grubby group of children scurried past the fence, laughing and shouting. The painter covered his nose in displeasure. Looking up, he saw Le writing furiously. Does my order require so many words? The painter wondered. Life isn't easy for anyone, sir. Le paused, collected the order, and said, please wait for your order. Goodbye. He opened the shop door and heard a commotion nearby. A red-haired beauty in men's clothing walked across the street arm in arm with a tall gentleman, walking intimately from Lower Street to Upper Street. Take the order, hurry up, Le muttered to himself as he threw the order on the bar. The barista picked up the order, took a look at it, and asked softly, is the customer in a hurry? It's better to be quick. The barista tore off the order and went into the kitchen. He quickly wrote a wine list and handed it to his assistant. The wine for Irish coffee is out of stock. Go to Lucas Winery across the street to get a bottle. Hurry up, the customer wants it in a hurry. Yeah, the assistant responded and ran across the main street into Lucas Winery as fast as he could. Mr. Lucas, the teacher wants a bottle of Irish whiskey. Here's the wine list. Please hurry. A bottle of Irish whiskey? Right. Lucas took the wine list and turned to get the wine. Irish whiskey? Irish? The ones in the cabinet are sold out. Then, what should I do? Don't worry, Lucas laughed. As long as it's wine from my hometown, there will be private goods. I'll go upstairs and get it for you now, please. Hurry up. Okay, impatient little guy, your Mr. Lucas is always fast. Like this, very fast, very fast, very fast. Chapter 571 You never get away from my control. Does my order require so many words? No one's life is easy. Ho ha ho ha ha ho. The alley was bustling with activity. Dirty children ran along, laughing and repeating nonsense in a playful manner. The noise echoed northward to the comfortable and leisurely Upper Street and southward to the bustling Lower Street. The alley was only 4 meters wide. Hannah, draped in her smock, stood at the intersection of the alley and the Lower Street. Across the main street was the hotel where Carmen was hiding. Across the alley to the right was Lundy's Cafe. Diagonally across the intersection was the building she had her eye on, the Lucas Winery. She had been standing there for a long time, perhaps over a minute. The throng naturally moved away from her, so she didn't need to hide. She simply stood there, taking in the winery's surroundings. There was nothing unusual about it: white walls, blue tiles, simple carvings on the window frames, and thick curtains in the rooms, identical from the second to the third floor. This normality made Hannah's attention grow even more pronounced. From an observer's perspective, she discovered for the first time that the observation environment at Lucas Winery was actually better than the hotel they had chosen. The room, already suspected of being suspicious, had a wide view at a convenient angle. While it could overlook the street, it also easily overlooked Evelyn's natural flower shop, the place where Lorraine and Rich had agreed to meet. Was that really Rich's observation post? If not, what was the reason for the reflection that looked like a bottle? If so, how much detail could an observer see of the street from behind the thick, silent curtains? Or should they sneak in and take a look? Hannah was torn. Logically, sneaking in would be the easiest way to verify the situation, but if there were truly someone inside, the only way to avoid detection by the living would be to make them dead. Were they partnered now? A dead person would likely affect future cooperation, but leaving them alive would also affect it. Failure to find them wouldn't affect anything, but then the point of sneaking in would be lost. It was the so-called dilemma. Henna gazed at the window, pondering, and caught a glimpse of a figure fleeing from the corner of her eye. A young man in a kitchen uniform emerged from the back alley of Lundy's Coffee, crossed the street, and entered Lucas Winery. A cafe kitchen worker going to a winery during work hours? Henna, unfamiliar with coffee culture and unaware of a type of coffee that uses whiskey instead of milk, naturally became curious about the kitchen worker's actions. Just then, across the alley. "Sir, here are your waffles and cappuccinos, 1 shilling and 3 pence total." "I'll leave the order here," Lair respectfully presented the painter with a tray. The painter's pen paused on the paper, frowning as he pondered for a moment. "Sorry, but I should have ordered a latte and a cappuccino, table 3, waffles and cappuccinos. It's clearly on the order sheet." "You've misremembered it, sir." The order sheet, the painter, puzzled, picked up the order sheet, seeing the few words etched neatly on it. It indeed said waffles and cappuccino. "That's not my order." "Young man, I remember it clearly. You wrote a lot on mine, saying something about how life isn't easy. My order requires so many words, no one's life is easy." "You wrote a lot on my order. Saying something about how life isn't easy, is that so?" The separated streams of people gathered, crashing onto the spot where Henna had stood like waves crashing on a beach, but Henna was long gone. Lev felt his eyes dry and itchy. He rubbed them, suppressing the painter's chatter. When he looked up again, he suddenly realized that the composition across the alley had changed. "Sir, there was originally a woman there, right? A woman." The painter was stunned. "Yes, a woman, with a nice figure, wearing a dark smock like a tramp." "Are you trying to change the subject, young man?" The painter's hair rose in anger. "There wasn't a woman in a smock there. Instead, there's a forged bill between you and me. I've never seen such despicable business practices. It's like, this bill is mine, and please let me borrow your painting." "Huh?" Before the painter could react, Rice had already collected the bill and snatched the unfinished painting away. The painting depicted a bustling and crowded street life, people shopping, running, extorting, wandering. The sorrow and livelihood of the people were vividly portrayed on the paper, hitting a reef at the street corner, squeezing and splitting into 2 streams. However, the location of the reef was left blank, a glaring blankness in the corner of the painting. The painter knew what was there, but he couldn't paint it. "Monsters," Le muttered to himself. "It's so reassuring to have monsters as companions." "I'm off," Harry said to Ryan, lowering his hat. "Take care. Give Borg my regards." "I will." Long-time partners didn't need extra blessings. Besides, while this was a top-level intelligence transfer, it didn't come with any inherent risks. The stakes were all on his boss's dignity. Faced with this reality, even Harry wasn't sure whether he wanted to win or lose. Winning was great. The psychological satisfaction of winning against an outstanding partner was no less than that of winning a duel. Losing was also great. Seeing Leshit's furious expression might be even more inspiring than winning. The boss of the old 8th Company was such a miraculous creature. Harry chuckled to himself, walked into the basement, opened the secret door, and turned around to find himself in a mansion off the street, behind the Lucas Winery. "It's like playing whack-a-mole. You never know which hole it'll pop out of," Harry muttered to himself softly, turned up the high collar of his windbreaker, and reached out to open the door. He was unaware of the eyes behind him. Henna stood quietly in the shadows a few houses away, her emerald eyes watching Harry turn into the main street. "Is that you? 4 days ago in the flower shop, you were standing next to Leshit." Against the flow of people, Harry walked towards the top of the slope. His steps were fast, and soon he passed Evelyn's natural flower shop. Lorraine and Katharina were admiring the flowers outside the flower shop, bored, like a pair of beautiful women on a tryst, without any sign of impatience. Harry didn't deliberately look at them, but walked straight through, and soon arrived at the end of the street, pushing open the door of a cake shop with familiarity. "Candy House in the Forest, welcome," the candy shop's waiter trotted over. "Are you alone?" "Yes, would you like the second-floor window seat? It offers a view of Beacon Hill, the best view in the shop." "I think I'd love that. Please follow me upstairs." "This way, thank you." After a seemingly unremarkable exchange, the waiter led Harry up the stairs. A revolving secret door opened at the corner, swallowing him in and then spitting out a figure of similar build, even the same hair color and clothing, from the other side. The devil quickly took a seat by the second-floor window, placed his order, and comfortably gazed up at Beacon Hill, allowing himself to be gazed upon. Harry, on the other hand, descended through the secret door, once again passing through the narrow passageway, and entered the underground cellar of the Borg Tavern. The highest level intelligence transmission was thus completed. 5 minutes later, Sig, clutching her small bag, said goodbye to Borg and, with a brisk, energetic stride, set off for her appointment. She'd be 15 minutes late for this date. Even though it was already 2:37, it would still take her at least another 8 minutes to walk to the florist, meaning she wouldn't be officially there until 2:45. But as God knows, it was Lorraine Drake who wasted the first half hour, and that debt shouldn't be held against her. Sigrid remained the devout and punctual Sigrid, keeping the promise she made to God in her youth. No matter who she was, she would always be only 15 minutes late. This was her declaration, using the great power of time as a tool to elegantly and subtly tell her opponent, "You are never out of my control." What expression would Lorraine have when that happened? The true protagonist would appear at the top of the road, draped in golden rosy clouds, raising the hem of her triumphant skirt to her defeated opponent. Would Lorraine's face display resentment? Resignation? Annoyance? Relief? Or even complete acceptance? Sig hoped to see a fourth possibility. Because Lorraine was her perceived equal, such a rival should possess keen insight, unwavering self-confidence, the courage to admit defeat, and the generosity to congratulate. Without any of these virtues, one cannot free themselves from the obsession with victory or defeat. Without this, one cannot truly let go. But isn't that a bit too high for little Drake, or perhaps too low? A demonic voice exploded in her ears. Maintaining the posture of swinging her arms and lifting her legs, Sig transformed into a statue. She remained frozen in the center of Wesley Street, a long way from Evelyn's natural atmosphere. On the other side of the street was the candy shop, overlooking the forests of Beacon Hill. Next door was the Borg's Tavern. Since leaving her home, she had only taken 42 steps. Sig could hear her own heartbeat, a little hurried and chaotic. Something was shouting meaninglessly, regardless of distance, as if trying to express something. It seemed to be some emotion, but Sig couldn't discern it. Was it reluctance? Helplessness? Annoyance? Relief? Or sincere conviction? Like a machine without oil, she turned her head back little by little, gradually seeing the straight nose, soft lips, emerald eyes, and finally a coffee-colored face as charming as an angel. "I remember, you are Hannah Yesra." Hannah held Sig's neck and whispered, "My name is Hannah Yesra. Where's Lorraine Drake?" Hannah raised her hand and pointed to the second floor of the candy house in the forest. Lorraine and Katerina were sitting side by side across from their stand-ins, smiling and waving at Sig. Sig finally smiled with relief, and her hands and feet regained their freedom. She stood firm, raised her head and looked Lorraine in the eye. "So he changed the date location without my permission, is that right?" Hannah thought for a moment. Today was Katerina's first time wearing high heels, and she rubbed her feet. Chapter 572, Be Frank. 3 o'clock in the afternoon is a special time. Lunch has just ended, and afternoon tea has yet to begin. Restaurants that cater to their customers seize this golden opportunity to rest, prepare for the upcoming peak business. However, no matter how lazy the break, serious businesses generally don't hang up closing signs unless there's something special going on. So, when the word close dances in front of the candy shop in the forest, passers-by naturally find it strange. Mr. Oliver, what are you doing today? Sorry, Oliver said, putting down the sign and nodding to his neighbor. Rhode Island relatives suddenly came over, so we had to. A family dinner? The neighbor suddenly realized. Yes, we need to prepare a family dinner. Last night, my granddaughter was clamoring for your strawberry cake, but with your relatives coming, there's nothing we can do. There's still some cake left, Oliver said quickly. I'll have someone wrap it up for little Luna right away. Oh, and by the way, today's fault is mine, so the cake is free. How can I be so embarrassed? It's just a simple favor. The shop's hustle and bustle of business lasted for nearly an hour, during which time suspicious-looking people of color could be seen entering and exiting the kitchen, their heads hidden and their faces shifty. It wasn't until a helpful neighbor spotted the cake on one of them that the truth finally came to light. Who would have thought? Those maggots on the lower street really have sharp noses. Lorraine saw it all. Only when the shop's finished products were 80% gone and no one came for 5 minutes did the waiters on duty finally have a break. They grumbled at Mr. Oliver's kindness and happily clocked out, their hands full of boxes. The second surprise today is that you actually hired real civilians in the intelligence base? Lorraine asked with interest. Rashid, or rather, Sig, dressed in women's clothing, looked annoyed. Only idiots worry that civilians will increase the risk of exposing the base. But the truth is, even well-trained intelligence agents can only impersonate someone else in specific situations. To achieve long-term undercover operations, the only thing we can do is to become someone else ourselves. That's the first surprise for me today. Lorraine took a bite of cake and glanced at Sig with an odd look. Even though I've known you were an imposter for a long time, and I learned your gender a few days ago, but it's true that hearing about you is worse than meeting you in person. Besides the same appearance, you're a completely different person. It's just the difference between being female and male. Sig pouted. Tell me, how much have you dug up? Lorraine put down his spoon and looked through the intelligence he had collected. It had all been collected and delivered by temporary employees in front of Sig. It was scattered and disorganized, with different papers, handwriting, and even educational levels. No matter how many times he looked at it, Lorraine felt a headache. Borg's Tavern, the candy store in the forest, the Chesley House on Upper Street, the Lucas Winery, the Lundy Cafe, the Ralph House on Lower Street. Time is limited, so what we can dig up is very limited. We haven't deliberately identified the relevant individuals. How is it? Are you satisfied? Sig's face darkened even further. Today was the first practice of the highest-level intelligence transmission program, which she had designed. She had thought it was perfect, but who knew that in just half an hour, Lorraine had extracted 80% of the nodes. Which link is the problem? Manpower. Lorraine flexed his biceps. The tunnel is your biggest flaw. Wesley Street is built on a mountain. With your manpower, you can't dig very far. Don't try to confuse us, Sig said with a sour face, unmoved. No matter how short the tunnel is, you have to know the starting point first. Lorraine turned his head away in disdain. I hate women who pursue me relentlessly. I hate men who hide their true identity. Lucas Winery, Lorraine tutted. Hannah met the man who transferred the information for you outside the flower shop. Her eyes are precious, even your disguise can't fool her. Aha. Idiot Harry, you're dead. Using obvious logical flaws to cover up a more convincing excuse is a standard lie. Although it seems old-fashioned, Lorraine couldn't admit that his victory was a fluke. The first fluke was that the Lucas Winery was across from the hotel. The second fluke was that the observation posts of both sides were across the street. The third fluke was that Hannah happened to be in that observation post. The fourth lucky break, Lev Lundy Coffee was so focused that he made a foolish mistake. Countless lucky breaks led Harry to Hannah, rendering all of Sig's elaborate plans ultimately unnecessary. But victory is victory. Since Sig had no reason to abandon the Wesley Street outpost she had run for 5 or 6 years just for a practiced confrontation, Lorraine effectively held a large group of hostages. Both sides were finally able to communicate openly, and Lorraine's second trip to Boston had started flawlessly. In the candy shop in the forest, Sig, having accepted his defeat, displayed a delightful professionalism and competence. Let me start with a surprising discovery. She stirred the newly served coffee. Cotton Jack, Hound Henry, and Viking Bonnet all appeared in Boston simultaneously, summoned by a call-up order officially issued by Cotton Jack. Also within the call-up area, Black Prince Bellamy and his ship, the Widow, had disappeared. For the first time today, Lorraine showed something unusual beyond her calculations. Is there anything at the auction that could interest pirates? Unless it's a ship that can restrain Valkyrie, there's nothing in the current pirate world that could interest the Pirate King, Sig commented mercilessly. Lorraine couldn't help but laugh. I'm just putting forward the possibility as objectively as possible. Don't be sarcastic. It's not conducive to cooperation. I'm simply telling you that the possibility is zero. If I were sarcastic, I would say, His Majesty the White Banner Pirate King has a really low opinion of his own brain. Lorraine shrugged. So you think they are coming for me? The possibility is more than half, Sig said. After Bastère, there is no force in the pirate world that can fight against you. When there is a rope around your neck slowly tightening, someone will always try to save themselves. I will investigate this matter. Time is limited. Let's talk business. Business, Sig pondered for a moment. The invitations to the Sanctuary Villa auction were sent out 2 months ago, and I only found 5. Excluding 1 archduke and 2 governors, there are only 2 targets you can convince. One is Baron Bartolomeo of Portugal, a wealthy man and slave owner who lives in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It is said that he is an avid supporter of the Queen. His biggest hobby is coastal barbecue, and the ingredients are young female slaves. Lorraine rubbed his brows in pain. It sounds like I'm having a hard time finding common ground with him. You can just stand in front of him. Sig smiled. You embarrassed His Majesty the Queen in Madrid. He will definitely throw a white glove at you, and then you can kill him and inherit his property. Can you inherit property through a duel? Aren't you a pirate? Lorraine couldn't find any reason to refute, so he could only blink apologetically. Next. Thank you, Tisk. Shame on pirates, Sig whispered, clearing his throat. The second is Mr. Baloney Green, who lives in Hartford, Connecticut, an American mining tycoon. It is said that he maintains good relations with many members of the Confederation Congress and is the money bag of the Republican Party. Do you know Haim Solomon? There are rumors that Mr. Green played a not-so-positive role in the legendary businessman's demise. Although the truth of the rumor cannot be verified, he is indeed the Solomon family's largest creditor. Just one word is enough to make the beautiful Miss Izzy Solomon homeless. Lorraine stared at Sig's delicate face for a long moment. I didn't expect you had so much manpower. You guys are always so dedicated to your fellow men. I'm really touched, Lorraine said, standing up. I'll let you know once I get the invitation. Goodbye. I won't see you off. Catalina, who had been sitting there all afternoon with absolutely no role to play, finally heard the signal to leave and hurriedly stood up, following Lorraine. Sig suddenly narrowed his eyes. Miss Catalina Dubo, I'm Sig, Sigrid Christina Dorisa. May I have the honor of treating you for coffee? Catalina glanced at Lorraine, noticing she didn't react. Not interested, thank you. Sig felt a little hurt. Tinting stood up. Miss Dubo, as both of you exceptional women with experience in men's clothing, I thought we'd have a lot of interesting conversation, perhaps, Catalina said, putting her hat on. But that doesn't stop me from not wanting coffee. Farewell. The date was over. Sig sat by the window, chin in his hand, watching the sun set over Beacon Hill. Lorraine and Catalina had already walked out of the candy house and met Hannah outside the house. Soon they waited for the carriage to arrive. There were intermittent voices through the window. Captain, I want to know the reason why you asked me to wear men's clothes for the date. Oh, Plan B, are you going to make me sell my body? It's just to establish a good communication environment when you are weak. Body, that has always been your freedom. Really, I swear to God, don't you believe in Jord? Jord is very generous. At this time, I can accommodate your beliefs. The door of the carriage closed here. Sig sighed heavily. Sure enough, there is no one in the Drake Chamber of Commerce who can make people happy. Chapter 573. First of all, exclude careful consideration. Nassau, Bahamas. Nassau is a prosperous city in the Bahamas, located on the island of New Providence. In 1670, King Charles II of England granted the Bahamas to 6 English nobles, who built a fort and a city here. The city was named Charlestown in honor of King Charles. A few years later, the town was renamed Nassau in honor of His Royal Highness Prince William of Orange, heir to the English throne. Once a pirate kingdom, over 70% of the city's residents were pirates, privateers, or shipbuilders. Spain and France once had to regularly dispatch fleets to raid Nassau to protect their merchant ships, but Nassau remained undestroyed. It wasn't until 1718 that Britain declared the Bahamas a crown colony and appointed the powerful privateer Roger Wood as its new governor. Roger Wood implemented an iron-fisted policy of eliminating pirates from Nassau. Not only did he drive all pirates from Nassau, but he also used his privateer fleet to decisively defeat a combined pirate fleet in the Battle of the Bahamas shortly thereafter. Piracy in the Bahamas Sea languished for a long time, allowing Bahamian commerce to revive, and Nassau to grow into a world-renowned and prosperous port. However, privateering was as good as it was bad. Nassau prospered thanks to the powerful privateer Roger Wood, but half a century later, it declined with the rise of another powerful privateer, Lorraine Drake, the pirate lord of the White Banner. In 1782, Lorraine captured Turtle Island during the First Order War, and the Sea Brotherhood fled Nassau with the defeated pirates. 6 months later, Blackbeard, having gained prestige during the Second Order War, settled in Eleuthera as part of the Royal Guard, attracting pirates from all walks of life. Prosperous Nassau changed hands overnight. As protectors, the Maritime Brotherhood emerged from the shadows, commanding the docks and enshrining the code. The Bahamian governorate was powerless against the powerful pirates, and the Royal Navy in the Caribbean, constrained by the prevailing political climate, was forced to watch them flourish. The Bahamas once again became a pirate kingdom, with the pirates proudly proclaiming, "The British rule by day, the Brotherhood rules by night." However, regardless of whether Britain was willing to share power with the pirates, could these carnivorous beasts truly govern? The answer was no. The economy of Nassau, and indeed the entire Bahamas, plummeted. Lorraine heard that the Bahamians were petitioning to restore the elderly Roger Wood to the governorate. The mere fact that they pinned their hopes on a man who was at least 80 years old spoke volumes about the unpopularity of the pirates and the current governorate. On July 3, the Valkyrie's slender form appeared off the coast of Nassau, its vibrant pansy rose flag fluttering from the towering mainmast, gleaming in the sunlight. Like a tsunami, it barreled towards the beautiful, paradise-like Bay of New Providence. Acheron, perched on the fourth observation platform, 15 meters above the mainmast, under a canopy. Beside him, Bell, similarly poised, they watched yet another pirate ship charging headlong. "Which one is this?" Acheron asked. "The 17th, if you count since entering Bahamian waters," Bell replied. 17 in just half a day, that's a lot of pirates in the sea, because there's a brotherhood in Nassau. Bell spread his hands. With a brotherhood, there's a Blackport. While taxes and other things aren't cheap, at least there's dignity. Acheron pointed at the retreating ship. It wasn't far enough away for the naked eye to see the lookout frantically removing the flag. Bell's eyes nearly rolled to the sky. "The White Banner Pirate King, it seems many still remember our proper title, Pirate Hunter. 11 days ago, in Boston, America. The game with Sig had yielded unexpected rewards, like a legendary item dropped by a chicken in the novice village. The initial impression was definitely not luck, but a bug. The 2 pieces of information Sig had delivered were precise, clear, and invaluable. The pirate news concerned everyone's safety. Lorraine needed to ascertain the cause and consequences before she could rest assured. The invitation letter concerned a commission from the Admiralty. After all, Lorraine's privateering rights originated from Great Britain, so it was more of an obligation attached to the privilege than a commission. Safety and obligation were equally important, but Lorraine didn't have enough time to address them one by one. Naturally, the team split in 2, each heading off to their respective battlefields, following their respective strengths. The leaders of each battlefield were unquestionable. Lorraine is primarily responsible for the pirate problem. His companions include Bell, Acheron, Leif, Kao, Katerina, Fafnir, and Daniel. They are generally combat-oriented and can handle most battles. Even their relatively weak social skills are sufficient in the pirate world. They are accompanied by 2 other companions, Harry, whom Sig has relied on for many years, and Lev, who previously worked at Lundy's Cafe. Both are experts in digging up intelligence. Carmen is undoubtedly responsible for the invitation letter issue. He is accompanied by Henna, Noah, Sharon, Wang Yi, and Karen, who is particularly concerned about Miss Solomon's future. Carmen and Karen are both celebrities and leaders throughout the New World, while Noah possesses unique social skills. Wang Yi and Henna complement Carmen's lack of combat power, ensuring their safety while also allowing Carmen to decide whether to resort to any means necessary. Their companions are Sig and Ryan. Ryan, on par with Harry, is the most versatile fighter in the old 8th Company, proficient in both close combat and ranged combat, with a particular focus on infiltration and interrogation. Sig himself had the task of entering the auction with Lorraine. This trip was more of a responsibility than an assistance. On June 24, the invitation group boarded the carriage to Hartford. That same afternoon, Lorraine gathered the entire group at the Haight shipyard and officially announced that Valkyrie was setting sail for Nassau. It was difficult to say how much thought was put into this order. With Lorraine's identity, no matter how thorough the preparations, he could not guarantee his safety in Nassau. But now that time was running out and the target was nowhere to be found, asking for answers from the source was at least the most direct and least patient approach. There is no news about the location of our old friends, and there is no news about their purpose, Lorraine said to his team members in the meeting room at the Haight shipyard. Boston is huge. If we were to hide, it would be as big as the Caribbean Sea, or even bigger. We really don't have a compelling reason to go to Nassau, but a month isn't enough time for us to squander like headless chickens. That's why we have to take the risk, go straight for the dragon's nest, try to scare, trick, or knock out what we need. There may be battles, there may be risks, there may be death, but hidden reefs are always more threatening than densely packed atolls. We're sailors, and the choice is clear. Now, let's vote on the options. Staying in Boston is Plan A, Going to Nassau is plan B. The minority obeys the majority, and my choice is plan B. After saying that, he closed his mouth and eyes. It wouldn't be the first time I've gone crazy with a captain, Acherin said. After all, the blood of the Drake family is the blood of desperados, Bell said. I want to know why Bonnet came to Boston, Leif said. I think more sea charts will help unlock the secret of the Fountain of Youth, Daniel said. I choose B. Ko stretched his neck. B. Katerina and Fafnir exchanged a glance. I'm sorry, but we don't look like sailors, and we won't be the target of the Pirate King. Harry raised his hand with a poker face, but the stupid lieutenant commander won't let us act alone. So is there no safer option? No, Lorraine grinned. Sure enough, Harry sighed and grabbed Lei's hand. Major Harry Sheffield of the Royal Secret Service, and Lieutenant Leigh Wright, are in attendance. That means it's passed unanimously. Lorraine stretched lazily and stood up. Order. Valkyrie cancels its leave, and all crew members return to their posts and prepare for sailing. Valkyrie will depart in 3 hours. Now, disband? Yes. Captain. P.S. Roger Wood really returned to Nassau in 1792 and established a Bahamian parliament, ending the Bahamas' history of colonial dictatorship. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574. The king arrives in the imperial capital. Occupying the margins and interstices of human civilization, the pirate world lacks many human traits compared to civilized society, and instead possesses a more beastly understanding. Perhaps intelligent beasts are a more fitting description of them. The world they dominate espouses the pure law of the jungle. Compared to the mainstream, under the same overriding profit-seeking ethos, the influence of spiritual considerations such as good and evil, grudges, tradition, and faith is significantly diminished. They lack the concept of friend or foe. If one were to force a distinction, it would likely be based on whether or not they are recognized by the Pirate Code, or the Brotherhood of the Sea. Such a hasty criterion is truly bizarre. The Brotherhood of the Sea derives its authority from the pirate King Henry Morgan. And after Morgan's passing, pirates are the least respectful of the Brotherhood. In their eyes, the Brotherhood is merely the last remnant of the great Morgan's decay. This sentiment is like a child losing their beloved father, only to be forced to accept the guardianship and upbringing of an incompetent uncle. Who deserves more sympathy? This question is one even an omniscient deity couldn't answer. But precisely because of this fundamental contradiction, pirates displayed unspeakable madness and unreasonableness on many common-sense issues. The perception of Lorraine is a defining cognitive contradiction for this generation of pirates. On the one hand, every pirate knew that Lorraine and his Drake Guild were the destroyers and most dangerous enemies of the pirate world. From the 2 guild wars to the recent Battle of Bastere, he had consistently herded the docile lambs on the pirate side. Under his incitement and leadership, the once submissive merchants had tasted the sweetness of rebellion and suddenly became belligerent and bloodthirsty, taking rebellion for granted. The pirate life had become far more difficult than it once was. Without the resolve to kill and be killed, pirates could barely even earn a basic living. On the other hand, unlike historical leaders who rebelled against pirates, Lorraine wasn't the repulsive hero, at least in his image. He was more like Henry Morgan, cleansed and reborn. Whatever the reasoning, his war with the pirate world began as a civil war. His declaration of war against Cotton Jack adhered to the legal code, and his pirate flag and title were recognized by the Sea Brotherhood. During the Order War, Lorraine voluntarily relinquished his flag and title. But for unknown reasons, despite having his homeland confiscated, the Sea Brotherhood's first act upon fleeing to Nassau was to hastily adopt Lorraine's new flag, creating a pirate king with a white banner, unprecedented in the world of pirates. Rumors circulated that this move was the work of the Black Baron Pavlomu. After all, the Order coalition led by Lorraine was at its peak of power. Pavlomu's recent defeat, the fall of Turtle Island, and the utter destruction of the pirate empire's prestige. While it was impossible to completely wipe out all pirates in the Caribbean, no one doubted at the time that Lorraine would bring his fleet to Nassau, effectively consigning the century-old pirate empire to history. It was then that the Maritime Brotherhood recognized the legitimacy of Lorraine's flag change. The White Rose Pansy became the Pirate King's banner. And the First Brotherhood War became another civil war among pirate kings. Unaware of the rules governing the succession of the pirate empire, the merchants, in the Brotherhood's unnatural defiance, perceived only the dread of a new pirate emperor ascending to the throne. No one wanted to see a new emperor emerge from the pirate empire, and a brief but serious disagreement erupted within the Brotherhood. The council urged Lorraine and the Drake merchant fleet to withdraw from the planned attack on Nassau. Lorraine refused, citing the Brotherhood's covenant, insisting that he would be the sole admiral in any war waged in the Brotherhood's name. This disagreement ultimately led to the abrupt conclusion of the First Brotherhood War and also created rifts within the Brotherhood's traditional merchant and privateer guilds, threatening its collapse. No one could have imagined that the man who ultimately saved the society would be a notorious pirate. The Brotherhood's outrageous actions affected not only merchants but also the pirate world. The opposition, led by Edward Blackbeard, culminated in the Second War, which followed the First Society War. The Second War had far-reaching consequences. The pirate empire gained a true spiritual leader, the society's Chamber of Commerce healed its rifts through valor, the Brotherhood gained a firm foothold in Nassau, and the skilled Drazi orchestrated the Bridgerton massacre, setting the stage for the subsequent Virgin Islands Crusade and the Battle of Basseterre. This series of events directly contributed to Lorraine's unique status among Caribbean pirates today, revered, feared, recognized, and challenged. Whether ordinary pirates struggling to survive, emerging powers gaining notoriety, notorious veterans, or the rare pirate king or pirate king candidate, no one dared to question Lorraine's status as a pirate. He was already the recognized pirate king of the Caribbean, the strongest and most likely to claim the throne. He had become the definitive measure of Caribbean pirate power. Only powerful and confident pirate factions and those war-minded madmen dared to attack the pure white pansy rose flag. Especially after Blackbeard's disastrous defeat at Basseterre, such individuals were becoming increasingly rare. Traveling with Drake became synonymous with safety and smooth sailing in the maritime trade. It was precisely because of this knowledge that Lorraine dared to land solo in what was now Nassau. Of course, necessary precautions and information remained constant. On June 24, the Valkyrie departed Boston and, after 6 days of full steam, docked at St. Diana Harbor in Bermuda. Before that, the express ships scattered throughout the Caribbean had arrived before Lorraine. Black Baron Pavlemy and the Royal Bliss were spotted off the coast of Brazil. His headquarters and the 2nd Squadron were hunting South America. The 1st Squadron was spotted on the west coast of North America, and the 3rd Squadron remained in the Lesser Antilles, showing no signs of heading north. Blackbeard Edward's headquarters was hunting in the Gulf of Mexico. The 1st and 3rd Squadrons were hunting the mid-latitude routes, while the 2nd and 4th Squadrons were scattered between windward and leeward. Eleuthera was empty, with only 4 ships remaining, including the Queen Anne's Revenge. The fleets of Cotton Jack, Hound Henry, and Viking Bonnet were nowhere to be found. Rumors of their northward march were unfounded. Black Prince Bellamy was also missing, rumored to have hunted in Africa and had not yet returned. Furthermore, 6 major pirate groups were under surveillance, none of which were currently in or around Grand Bahama waters. Lorraine was overwhelmed by how smoothly the situation had progressed. He had originally expected to be lucky enough to wait for a relatively safe window within 10 days. Who knew that most of the pirates capable of ambushing the Valkyrie were actually not near Nassau? Opportunity not to be missed. After a night and a day of rest, fully refreshed and restocked with ammunition, the Valkyrie sailed out of St. Diana Harbor under cover of darkness. After a night of sailing, it entered Bahamian waters from the north. After another half-day of sailing, it suddenly approached New Providence Harbor and appeared in Nassau Bay with lightning speed. Fleeing like a wolf, scurrying like a rat. Chapter 575, Meeting at a Roadside Stall. Distance to port 2000. Pilotage received from the Port Authority, directing us to berth number 3, pilot docking, flag signal. Welcome to Nassau. Observational information was relayed down the ship's deck, reaching the aft deck and the Valkyrie's captain's command platform. Katerina stood at the helm, looking up, awaiting the captain's orders. Belle, draped in the long trench coat that symbolized a captain, reached out and grasped the railing. As planned, alert level raised to level 1, combat readiness. Ports open, port and turret, all crew members at their posts, lower square sail. Lower tackling sails. Half sail, bow sail adjusted to manual control. Valkyrie maintains a cruise at 1,500 to 2,000 Cs. Inform pilot, the crew wants to go fishing in the harbor. Thank you for your concern. Order received. Catalina patted the helmsman and shouted back, all ships at level 1, combat readiness. Valkyrie maintains a cruise at 1,500 to 2,000 Cs, port and turrets open, stormtroopers collect their weapons, mess hall ready, port 5. Lower sails. Cruise. A few kilometers away, Harbor Street. Harbor Street is Nassau's oldest street, dating back to the time of Georgian, when Nassau was first founded. The street is lined with the era's popular light-colored wooden buildings, with bright white or blue roofs, a well-proportioned rhythm of heights and a clear distinction between front and back. This jagged pattern of buildings leaves vast expanses of open space in front of the houses facing the street. If properly arranged, it would surely create a beautiful harborfront streetscape. But the people of Nassau clearly don't see it that way. The open spaces are filled with a variety of makeshift tents draped with old canvas, beneath which are wooden tables and chairs of varying sizes and age. Sallow-faced people peddle food and handicrafts beneath the tents. The offerings are unremarkable, mostly local rum, scalding conch, and drunks whose lives are indistinguishable. Fortunately, high-quality ingredients don't require elaborate preparations. New Providence conch is large, plump, tender, and juicy, naturally flavored with a salty seawater and its own pungency. Dipped in a little freshly squeezed lemon juice, it offers a varied and lingering aftertaste. It's also known to be a miraculous cure for scurvy, making it a beloved favorite among sailors traveling the country. At noon, the July sun shone brightly. Enjoying the harbor breeze, Lorraine leisurely sorted conch shells under a soft awning. Leif's fingers weren't used to such delicate work. He tried 4 or 5 times, but each conch ended up being torn apart. Furious, he yanked out his uncrowned king with a clang and slashed at the conch on the plate. The unyielding shell flew high with a clang, like a cannonball, landing firmly in the middle of the long street. Someone ran over to the conch, shouting, "A large ship is refusing to enter the harbor." "I heard even its gun ports are showing." "A large ship." People gathered around. "How big is it?" The dock people said it's 70 meters. 70 meters, it's not a battleship, it's an armed merchant ship with a single gun deck, and it's armored. The man jumped onto a pile and gazed toward the dock. My brother, a pilot at the Port Authority, said the ship was flying a white Pansy and Rose flag. Pansy and Rose, a 70-meter class armed merchant ship. I see it. The Valkyrie cruised from the dock, following the long coastline of New Providence, slowly and steadily carving a white line on the harbor's surface. Exclamations echoed from the shore. The pirate ship is on the run. That's Ginny the Nutria, the son of an Irish farmer. The drunks say he has been particularly active this year, robbing a slave fleet. He has 5 large ships and more than 1,000 people under his command. Didn't he have a fight with Cotton Jack's men in the open sea 2 months ago? It seemed like a gang robbing a gang. Later, Blackbeard Edward came out to mediate, and Cotton Jack suffered a great loss. He is worthy of being a rising star of the thugs. No, is this desperado on the run? Did you just notice it? The flag is lowered, just like a dog showing its belly. It looks so docile. Hey. Does anyone know the origin of that big ship? White flag, Pansy, ironclad ship. Could it be, from a close distance, His Highness's Valkyrie is really majestic? An old voice sounded in Lorraine's ears. In fact, it's not impressive enough. Lorraine continued to pick at his conch meat without raising his head. Ginny attacked Drake's ocean fleet. Although he hid a wall, I would still sink him if it weren't for a gesture of goodwill to the Brotherhood. Your Highness, you're joking. The old man sat down opposite Lorraine and Leif. There are 67 pirate ships in Nassau today, and there will be more tonight. If we really fire, I'm afraid your Highness can't handle it. Don't worry, Valkyrie has made supplies before coming. Even if there are more ships with firepower less than 18 pounds, it will only increase the burden on the gunners. Lorraine paused. Also, I don't plan to invite you to lunch. The old man's hand reaching for the conch froze. Your Highness, have you forgotten the other prince in Eleuthera? Blackbeard Edward is a good opponent, but unfortunately his main force went to the Gulf of Mexico, and there are only 4 ships left in Eleuthera. He dare not come. If he shows up, you will have the honor of witnessing the sinking of the Queen Anne's Revenge. All the cards that can be revealed have been revealed. Sweat broke out on the old man's face, and he looked at Lorraine steadily. Your Highness, you didn't come here this time for these old bones of the Brotherhood, did you? You helped me a lot with the flag change issue. Lorraine put the empty conch on the wooden plate sarcastically. But yes, I don't have the time to attack the dragon directly. The old man took a long breath. Then what is your purpose? There was a call some time ago. Those summoned included Cotton Jack, Hound Henry, Viking Bonnet and Black Prince Bellamy. I want to know the specific details, who summoned them and what is the purpose. We don't know. Lorraine raised his eyebrows. Pirates are like amphibians. Even if they go ashore, they don't want to be too far away from the water. Number 71 Harbor Street, is that a 4-story building with yellow walls and white roof? Panic flashed across the old man's face, but he still forced himself to be calm. The Brotherhood is the home of all pirates. Although it is a bit simple, we always welcome our pirates to return home. I promised my crew we wouldn't enter any enclosed areas this time, to avoid complications and unpleasant surprises. But since it's a rare Brotherhood gathering, I'd really like to take another look at the code, Lorraine asked with a smile. How about I help you take the roof off? It was another threat. The old man's flesh trembled with fear and anger, but not with surprise. In the eyes of the Sea Brotherhood, Lorraine had always been a complete tyrant, a man who revered violence and was erratic. He was far more dangerous than Edward Blackbeard or Pavlomew the Black Baron. His lack of reverence for the code allowed him to act without scruples, and his lack of ambition for the Empire made his actions unpredictable. Just like this time. Lorraine talked about sinking, bombarding, and bombarding, his words revolving around the smoke of war. The old man had no way of judging his words, and he couldn't afford the consequences of misjudging them. Your Highness, you should already know when and where I landed, right? Lorraine suddenly switched to aggressive attack mode. The old man was caught off guard and answered subconsciously, it was an hour ago, on Riviera Beach. See, you can see everything that happens in Nassau. Otherwise, you wouldn't have found me in less than an hour without any notice. Who issued the call? Think about it, we have plenty of time. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.